Howdy-o, Copy Gang. Today we are going to be doing a tier list of cards in Elestrals. As of Daybreak, I would say that I'm a moderate casual. I would say I'm about a break-even win record kind of player. I'm not a top-tier player. I'm not a bottom-tier player. I'm somewhere in the middle, and I think it's a important place to have players at. I have made this list of cards that I see as relevant. I've left some key cards out. There's some cards that I'm just like lumping in with other cards. And I think Daybreak is going to bring a lot of diversity. I think in general, there are going to be some decks that I'm going to talk about that I think people are underrating a lot. And then there are decks that I think that people are overrating a bit. So let's talk about the tiers. Game Warping, I think, is a card that you're actively thinking about when you are playing the game. If you're playing turn 1 and you don't know what they're on, you're considering, well, they could do this. If you're playing turn 2 and you're deciding to keep or not, you have to think about, well, could they have this? And if you're mid-game, you might stop and think, well, do they have this card? This card would really mess me up right now. And you think that there's a pretty good chance that it's there. And these cards can like swing a game or take over a game on their own, things like that. Broken are cards that have a crazy amount of value and can swing the game, but they're more moderate. Broken cards are broken. They're much more powerful than the average cards you can be playing, but they don't quite feel like they are the cards you're seeing all the time. They might be a little more niche, or they might be sealed to a deck. They might be broken under certain circumstances, but they're not going to swing a game on their own or something like that. It's not quite game warping, but it still feels way better than other cards in the game. Cracked feels better than most of the cards in the game. It feels like it can really have that momentum for the game that you need to seal it, to take over and seal. That's what you're looking at with Cracked. Good, I would say, is what used to be the meat and the potatoes category. These are the cards that you're going to play in your deck to fill them, because you need your essential role players in the deck, like your beaters, your Nexus pieces, your whatever else that you see that like it's just going to go in the deck to fill it. It's not necessarily you're playing it to do the core thing that your deck is trying to do. Pretty decent are the cards that you're playing that will probably get power crept in a couple sets. The cards that you're playing because you're playing your element and there's not better options, they don't fit perfectly into your deck, but they're not bad either. They don't detract. And it feels like there could be a card that is better than them theoretically pretty easily. The almost it but category are cards that read on paper like they could do a lot, but they're not there for some reason. Like, they're held back by consistency. I think consistency is probably the biggest one. But also power level can be a consideration. Like the raw stats, how much they trade down in card value. I remember in my original card rankings, I thought that Shield of Achilles was like bad because you're going down on cards and on spirits. But it is because the amount of tempo you gain merits that. These are cards that have that kind of feeling, but they don't merit it. They don't push you up there enough. The very niche is like you're running 1 or 2 of this copy of card in like one deck, and then anywhere else you're playing it, it's bad. Cope means that we want this card to be good. We like it, and it reads like there could be situations that are good, but it's just not there. The power is too weak on that card. And then the joke are cards that are just like really bad that you should not be playing them. Okay, we're going to start with Cryo Scorch. This is, I'm going to put it in very niche. You're running 1 or 2 copies if you're in a Frost heavy deck that runs exactly Cryoling and Cryovern, so you're not really on the more Frost strategy. Cryoling and Cryovern to me reads like if you're running a good number of Cryovern, reading more like a Frost Beater deck than a Frost Nexus deck, so you're in a very specific category. And then even then, you probably don't want to run more than 1 or 2. Really, probably just 1 because it's so searchable and you want it to end the game. So it's extremely niche. I've won a game with this now, and it was like really satisfying. I think Cryo Scorch was a really good design. I think that they really hit it with Frostfall with this. Not on a power level, but on a design level, on a fun level, this card is really high. But on a power level, I'm going to put it in very niche. Cryoling, however, I'm going to put in Cracked. Going into Cryovern is really good, and gaining power on its own is good. You can misenchant it if that is a negative at that time, but in general, that's just like really good raw stats. It's, I would say, probably the best one-cost beater in the game, even though it's complicated in that it's not really a one-cost beater. It's kind of like a two-cost beater that you also have to do setup for. Frigicub is more complicated. Frigicub reads like it would be strong. It can get a lot of damage out pretty quickly, and there are some other things you can do, like stacking spirits on other cards, but I'm going to put it in the almost it but category because it feels like how overcommitting you are to spirits really sets yourself up to be blown out. It also, like, the other cool thing about Frigicub is that it helps you set up the Ascensions pretty easy compared to other cards. But the Ascensions are typically not that great. Necruff, we're going to go with good. The 5 power is the most relevant thing about Necruff, but the burn definitely comes up pretty frequently. I think that Fire is definitely not embarrassed of Necruff. It is a solid card. This will probably end up toward the top of good, but it doesn't feel like you're doing things better than, like, that far away better. I would say that Cryoling does feel far and away better than other Earth Beater options, or Frost Beater options, and much better than some of the beaters in some elements. And Cryoling, I would say, does feel better than Necruff most of the time, for example. But Necruff itself is pretty good. Like, there are situations where Necruff is just a card to really put that extra edge of pressure that you need on. Narpoon. That was my Jolt reaction. We're going to go with pretty decent. We've got a good little layer here for you to see. Narpoon, I'm putting in pretty decent. The deck that you build around it isn't exactly super synergistic. I could see a world where in the future this card gets better. At the moment, though, I would say that Frost and Water don't really synergize. In fact, I would say in the Frostfall meta, you mostly wanted to play like a core element and just splash for runes, and I think that will likely not change in Daybreak, except for certain examples. I think splashing will get bigger. I also think that the best of 3 meta will really change what people are playing. Narpoon could, like, benefit from that. Or is this Waylance? I don't remember which one is which. But this could benefit a lot from a best of 3 meta, as all searchers can. But I think typically the searching of a different element, you want really great stats for that, and like having the 4 power kind of puts a ceiling on it. It's not bad, but there are like better things to do. Polaracne. I'm gonna put Polaracne in Cope. Defensive cards in general and Elestrals, especially defensive Ascensions, feel like there are better things you can do. It feels like you're setting yourself up to get Invoked Ruined out. And while this card does have like raw power, there's just like better things you could do. If you're playing this, you could be playing like the Morfrost deck. Okay, Smoltuga. Okay, my gut reaction on Smoltuga is worse than the card actually plays. We see this card consistently matter because searching a Necruff or searching a Kinleo is a good enough effect, and the 5 defense really matters. Especially since you can play Galaxy too, so it makes it a good beater. I'm actually going to put Smoltuga. See, if it was just me in a vacuum and I didn't watch other people play the game, I would probably put it in pretty decent because of the mixing element. But the 5 defense sets it apart from... I'm gonna get so much trash for not remembering which one this is. Uh, I'm gonna put it above Necruff though, because it can search Necruff and it has 5 itself. Uh, yeah. Next is Ambrosia, and Ambrosia is an interesting thing. It is, how powerful is Ambrosia? I mean, it just feels good in a single game, but it's cracked sometimes where you're at 6 to 6 spirits. It's broken if it's 1 to 1 spirit, but I'm going to say it's game warping, because when you're getting down to those lower spirits, you're calculating, well, I can do this if I get an Ambrosia. I can do that if I play an Ambrosia. And there's a reason Ambrosia is a 3 of in almost every tournament topping deck. I think it is a positive thing. I think it really speaks to the Elestral system that a life gain card is one of the meta cards, because I've never seen like a major game that life gain was such a big part of it and such a big consideration. So I will happily put Ambrosia in game warping. Keone, it's kind of a mixed bag. You're mostly playing, well, you'll play this in probably any heavy frost deck. It has certain combo cards with Morfrost and Infrostrix. The effect itself in a vacuum is pretty decent, because it's kind of expensive to get back cards, and you're going to have to use your normal action most of the time. I'm going to bump it up to good for the times where you don't have to use your normal action to effectively use its ability. Drops of Leaf. Drops of Leaf was highly played before a lot of people started playing the game. And I think what we've realized is that Drops of Leaf, it's kind of a high cost for the effect you're getting. And it's like, what do you cut? Your counter ruins? If you're hunting for a counter ruin, you could just run another counter ruin and hit it. If you're hunting for an Elestral, you could just run another Elestral and hit it. I think that it is probably better than it is the amount of play it sees currently. But I'm going to put it in almost it, but because there's not a lot of control, and dex slots get really tight in Elestrals already. I think as we advance further into Elestrals, dex slots will become even tighter, and I think it's interesting that effects like this that let you re-tech your hand, the opportunity cost of what else you could play, or the amount of spirits you have to burn for it, feels pretty high, to the point to where you would rather play more staples. Okay, Gorgon's Gaze. I also have really mixed opinions on Gorgon's Gaze. It is at least cracked, right? It can stop so many things. It can win you so many situations. It should be broken, right? Because it does things no other card does. It's obviously game warping, because you're constantly thinking about, well, do I just lose if I play this into a Gorgon's Gaze? The conversation honestly gets to the point too, is Gorgon's Gaze the best card in the game? And I err toward no, because it doesn't take over the game itself. There are situations like they attack you with their Galaxy, you Gorgon's Gaze, drop them to 2, you kill them, and then you just run the game. You just run shot from there. But there are also situations where they play their tutor, you have no answer for whatever they're going to tutor, so you Gorgon's Gaze them, but they still have their Elestrals on the field. There are times where you're behind, you draw this, they already have 2 Elestrals out, you really just needed an Elestral with a big body, and now you have to expend a draw, and you're really far behind. But I think it is, I don't think it's the best card of the game, but I think it is definitely in the top 2 or 3 cards in the game, because it does interactions that you can't do with any other card. It's a 3 of in like every deck. You have to constantly consider how bad you lose to it. Chains of Prometheus. I think this is also a controversial card. It is so expensive for what it does. It's hard to splash. People want to play it more than they do, or people really like shove this in everything. I think it's kind of a mix. I think with the counter, what you want is to be able to make a big swing with this card. And to me, that makes it kind of fail on quadrant theory. You want to be either ahead or climbing up to ahead for this card to really win out for you. I'm going to keep it in pretty decent. I'm actually going to keep it right here, I think. It's so expensive for what it does. And fire, you can burn through spirits really fast with fire. And I don't know, it doesn't feel like the counter killer that we saw it and thought it was going to be. It's certainly, if I see somebody play it, I'm not embarrassed for them, but it makes me feel like, okay, I have a bigger chance to beat you than I thought, because that seems like a suboptimal card compared to what you could be playing. Okay, Eruption gets a lot of new context in Daybreak. With Boltuga and Vesuvituga, you can play it more consistently, and you can recover while playing it. Barabib is also really relevant to Eruption. It can make it burn for 4 instead of 3, and it makes like Fruit Boom have another card that makes sense with it. I'm gonna put Eruption into the good category. I think that deck overall has some fundamental issues that we can talk about some other time. The core issue, I think, is a case of ratios. I think it's going to be really hard to get the correct ratio, and I think different people will kind of play it differently, and I think that will affect the number of ratio they will need to play. And I think it'll be kind of a hard deck to pilot. Like, it's not a turn off your brain and just draw 100 cards and erupt a bunch of times, because you have to really consider like protecting your board. And if you're considering protecting your board, you need counter runes to do it. I don't know. I think the complexity of the deck and the complexity of the play is going to kind of put Eruption kind of in the middle. The spirit swings that it can do can be pretty big, and increasingly big in Daybreak. I think it is still not a meta strategy, though, for sure. Tsunami. Okay, the Tsunami is a really interesting card in Daybreak. If you think about it, people are really excited for Chronodile, and a moderate number of people are really excited about Kuribis. This means that more people will be playing water. And this is in addition to water beaters with Galaxy and Smoltuga, and like you can even do like a beater Nexus thing with Aphoros and Dratagua. With an increase in water play, I think Tsunami is moving down, but still undeniably, this card is game warping to the point to where people still consider, should I misenchant this to dodge a Tsunami? Should I enchant an extra water on this to dodge a Tsunami? It's a 3 of in pretty much every deck, because it can swing 3 Elestral. It can swing a 3 Elestral lead into a Elestral deficit in one turn, and it's like the only card that can make that big of a swing with just 1 spirit. Imperilwatt. Wow, it has been a really interesting season of the Elestriad. I have watched it really devotedly. I watched today's episode earlier, and man, I've been rooting for the Imperilwatts. I think that the draft was kind of against them this season. I think there was a world where you could cast Imperilwatt and it just blow up the board, and that's just not a fun thing, because then you just sweep away the board on its own. And I think you can't print that card. But at the same time, you can print a better card than, hey, I have to put like 6 things on this so that I can attack with it. And like it can still get Gorgonsed if they have it. So I'm putting this in the cope. I'm gonna put it below Polarachne. I think Polarachne can take over more games than Imperial White can, and that's kind of crazy. But I will say, like Cryo Scorch, Imperial White is such a cool card. It's a card that you see and you just want to make it work. Like, you want to play the casual game where this is a card that takes over the game and wins it for you. This is a card that will make moments for some people that make them fall in love with Elestrals to the point to where they play it for years. And it's like one of the cards that really had me love Frostfall. I think Frostfall was quite an achievement, and Imperial is part of the reason why. Next, we are going to Chillalotl. I think Chillalotl is underplayed. I think all the Ruin interaction is underplayed, but the stats on Chillalotl are definitely not great. So I'm going to put it in almost it, but it's almost it, but its stats are bad. If its stats were good, it would be a pretty playable card, I think. Shutting down multiple counter runes, pretty good. But being able to reactivate them so easily is pretty bad. Also, to anyone that's new and watching this and doesn't know, Chillalotl was made in a fan contest where we got to vote on what animal was made into an Elestral. We picked the Axolotl, and we got to vote on what element it would be. I was in the camp that really wanted it to be Thunder Fire, but it ended up being Ice. Hopefully we'll get that Thunder Fire Nexus one day. Elechick. Okay, wow. Okay, this is one of the really interesting, like, this card, its place is going to be very contended in this set. I would say that this card has been game warping or broken the entire time Elestrals has existed, because searching for Divine Runes is crazy. It sets up Nexus so consistently, but it can also just set up big plays with Demeter or Zeus so consistently. I think actually it was thought in Proto that Thunder was not very good. I think Proto was undertested. I think it was probably still the best deck in Proto. Even with a 4/4 Rummagem and a 2/4 Astrabbit, I think the searching power between Thunder's cards is what makes Thunder crazy. Every card has okay stats, at least, and they all get you another card. I'm going to put Elechick in Game Warping. This is, no, we're going to lower it to Broken. We don't have any Brokens yet. Might move that up later. The ability to find your Divine Ruins, and if they're playing Thunder, you're like, well, they could drop an Elechick and go to a Zeus. That means that they can make a 7 at any time. Makes you really consider how you're playing the game. Next, we are going to Sorlet. Sorlet, I really liked the conversation Spicy Sausage had the other night of breaking down the differences between Sorlet and Viserys. And I think Sorlet can be the better generic beater. We talked about, do you just main deck Sorlet because Exaltus can search it? And you can misenchant Sorlet as water if you're afraid of Tsunami. Or if you don't want to run the Wind Spirits, you can just always misenchant it, and it's just a 5 that's good that can be searched by Exaltus. I would say that I would rather search Galaxy, but like Spicy kind of said that there's a pretty good argument to make that you would rather run Sorlet in that place. But I think we will be seeing a lot of Exaltus. I think Sorlet is a really good card to pull with that. And Wind Nexus is one of my favorite decks. I think we are getting a lot of new tools for Wind Nexus, but I think that Sorlet is still probably the primary beater because it is a 5. I think it is either a primary or a co-primary beater in Wind, and I think Wind is an underrated deck, especially in Frostfall, but I think it will probably remain to be underrated because it doesn't get any really flashy cards that make people say, man, that's broken. But I'm going to put Sorlet at probably the bottom of Cracked. P-Gust, oh my god, y'all are sleeping on P-Gust and Frostfall. The amount of counter runes people are playing like 12 counter runes most of the time, something like that. P-Gust burns through that. I think what people are doing incorrect is they're going P-Gust in attack and letting it die on the crackback. To me, what you need to do is protect P-Gust as long as you can, like to a reasonable extent, and pop back row after back row, eat card after card with P-Gust, and build up the spirits. So if they cannot also protect their Elestrals without their ruins, you get to swing in for 2-3 at the end of your chain. But I would not be swinging with P-Gust every turn. I'd be playing it in defense most of the time. This is the deck that I've played the most in Frostfall, and Frostfall I've definitely had a way higher win percentage than in base set. And I think it's largely because people are underrating P-Gust. I think this thing is a little machine gun. I think it will be a little worse in Daybreak, where we get more turbo options. But I still am going to put it in cracked. I think this card is way better. I think this is like maybe the most underrated card in Elestrals right now. Nectar of the Gods is a cool card. What does it do? We have to make that joke every time, and it will not be funny, but we have to do it. Nectar of the Gods saw a big surge in play during Frostfall. I think the recovery Elestrals of Dratagua and Catarant really made it more playable. I think that Arcolith is an option for Solar, or Lunar, not Lunar, Thunder, and it could see play in Thunder like that. I don't think so, though. The hard thing with Nog is usually what you cut for it, and the spirits are kind of intense. Losing 2 spirits that fast can often be the difference between winning a game and losing a game. A lot of games in Elestrals come down to that. At the same time, the 2 cards is really valuable. So I think it really depends on how much recovery is being played and how much recovery is good. I think recovery will still be good, but it's not going to be the best thing you can do. So I'm actually going to put Nog in good. I'm going to put it below the good beaters, though. I think it is a less essential thing than having good beaters. I think having good stats in your deck is more important than having generic card draw. Resting on your laurels, however, I think is a lot less replaceable card. There are some decks that are getting like in archetype pops, water and solar especially. There are other new equalizers, like Panelance can be kind of a weird equalizer. I still think that resting on your laurels is not very replaceable. I think it could swing games. It loses out on Quadrant 3 that it's bad at parity or ahead. That's fine because it can really swing you from behind, and I feel like cards that swing you from behind tend to be a little better. And it only costs 1, which is so cheap for this card. I'm going to put it in broken below Elechic. I think Elechic is better on card advantage, and it gives you proactive tempo, where resting on your laurels helps you get tempo back. And putting it right here puts it right above Sorlet. I would love another art for resting on your laurels, though. I think that the ruins should kind of stay playable for a long time and get a lot of different versions. I'm really happy to see full art ruins in Daybreak. Shield of Achilles. This is a card that has super changed in my time over playing Elestrals, how I view it. I view it as directly purchasing tempo now. I think I used to see it as a card that was really down in card advantage, and this game you play a lot of cast triggers. So I was thinking it gets bounced through my hand, so I get to play my Elechic, search again, or I get to play Astrabbit, look at the top 3 again. While that's true, what I was missing is, well, that's not really quite the purpose of the card, though. You're not doing it to protect like 1 spirit or 3 spirits even. You're doing it to protect your Elestral on the board that you will later be able to use to take out those problematic cards. I think that this card is definitely game warping. I think it is probably going to be... I think as the game is right now in Frostfall, I think Tsunami would be higher, but I think the amount of extra water play will make Shield of Achilles better. I think that there will be games where you want to side out Tsunami because they're on water, and I think there are already times like that in Frostfall. But I think best of 3 is definitely going to make Tsunami, you know, omnipresent, but side-outable. Divine Blessing. This is a card that you read and you go, oh my god, I can stop their Earthquake, I can stop their Nog, their Ambrosia, I can stop their Resting, I can stop. But what I will point out is we haven't gotten to a lot of those cards, but look at the top here. It's all counter runes. It's not really invoke runes. And I put chains down here saying that it feels expensive and you have to line up your stuff right. Divine Blessing, you really have to set everything up so right. And then the payoff can be pretty strong. But I find I've played it a lot and it spends more time sitting my hand waiting for a target than it does just blowing people out. I'm actually going to put this in very niche. If you have a lot of free spirits out and you're drawing extra cards, then sure, this could be a good option. Like Fruit might be an option if you want to play Demeter, I guess. But like it feels not worth it most of the time. Like having a spirit on field is a setup, and burning that spirit for their card and this card usually just isn't worth it. Tornado bounces a rune. I think rune interaction is very underrated, but this card is a total joke. Why is it not letting me click on things? Too many ads everywhere, I think. Tornado is a total joke. This card bounces a rune to their hand. They can just play it later. Thunderstorm, however... So, Thunderstorm, obviously we have Bronze Glow. That's a synergy. You can play it in Thunder. I said rune removal is underrated. I think this card is underrated, but I'm going to put it in very niche. I'm not putting it in very niche because of Bronteglow. I'm putting it in very niche because I think its main problem is what do you cut for it? And then even then, it feels like this is made for an aggressive deck where you're mostly just concerned with counter runes. And that's just not how Thunder is built right now. I think if we got like something like an attack trigger like Viserys where you just really get a huge amount of value from attacking, Thunderstorm will be one of the cards that gets a big boost from that. Okay, Catarant. Catarant is also a card that is pretty interesting. Recovery tends to be pretty good in Elestrals, but Catarant, Frost Nexus just doesn't feel like it took off like it could have. It felt like Frost Nexus could have been this deck that gets a lot of spirits out quickly, hits you really hard, and then can recover behind things like Keon, Catarant, and Frostrix. But in practice, your stats are pretty low, and you're really susceptible to counter runes and removal. I'm going to leave it in... I think I'm going to put it in pretty decent, but toward the bottom of pretty decent. The 3-1 does feel really bad, and oftentimes, if you're in top deck mode, this is not what you need to get out of your situation. A 3-1 feels like, oh man, this gets me one more turn, but I don't need one more turn. I need to swing this game back around. Okay. Now we are at the Morfrost line. I have not played a lot of Morfrost myself. I think I've played like 2 games of Morfrost, but I've played against it a decent bit. So I'm just going off of how it feels when I'm playing against Morfrost. I'm going to put... Whoa. Things are doing things that I'm not telling them to do. Maybe I should quit using mouse and just use my keypad. Okay, and that takes us to the Morfrost line. I haven't played a lot of Morfrost. I've played a little bit. It's just not appealing to me. I think there will be an archetypal, a named Elestral that will be my thing one day. But Morfrost just doesn't appeal to me. But I have played against it a lot, and so I'll rank this based on how scary it feels. Lycan, I'm going to put in... Why did Cryoscorch get there? That's supposed to be down here. That's supposed to be here, and that's supposed to be here. Wow. A lot of things got mixed around. Lycan form, I'm going to put in Cracked. It's a very strong starter for the engine. It itself does not feel like it's the thing taking over the game, but it definitely gets you a lot of value that feels really free in the deck. In this form, I'm also going to put in... I'm going to put Indus and Cracked above... I think I'm going to put both of these above P-Gus, but below Sorlet. They are not the beaters themselves. I think Indus form will actually... Yeah, I had Indus form and Broken and Frostfall. But in Daybreak, I think that Dense Fog and other destroy options are going to make it worse. And I think overall, the Morfrost engine, like, its power is going to get moved around from where it was in Frostfall. I think it is just going to be a big swarm deck where you want to hope that they don't have, like, Tsunami, and you want to build a 4 Elestral board and swing in really fast. A-Bomb feels a little broken. That card gets really big really fast. Terraform, I'll put over here. I'll put Terraform below Cryling, but above Sorlet. The protection effect, just like there are some games where you just can't deal with it, and that completely seals the deal. There's nothing else you can do in that game. But there are games where they have the out, and it's not a big deal. I think that the Morfrost deck in Daybreak is still playable. I don't think it's going to be meta or anything. I think that it will be underrated. I think it'll be more playable than people will play it. I think it is a top-worthy deck still, but people aren't really going to play it because they will default to what they say is the best deck. I think Daybreak will have a big syndrome of there will be 2 or 3 decks, like the current meta, that everybody just plays because everybody plays them, and they hear that that's the best deck. They don't want to put a bunch of reps in to learn how to adjust around that. Maybe the Spark It banning that happened today can change that a little bit. Arcturus, man, this guy, okay, so there was talk in the Discord about Cryling and Pulsar being very similar cards, but I think the real loser in this situation is going to be Arcturus. I think this card is pretty decent now. I think actually it was already pretty decent, but I think it's going from the top of pretty decent to the bottom of pretty decent. I think it's falling a little bit. It paying a lot of spirits to get stat for 1 turn. You know, that's fine, and it works with Cryling, but I think the cooler thing is Pulsar, and I think naturally you're just going to go through spirits over time. You don't have to, like, force yourself to go through spirits, and the burst is, like, fine. But now we're going to go to Infrostrix, and I think special casting without using your normal cast is super strong. I think that getting extra bodies on the board, super good. It helps you play like around PTA, which is a big nuisance sometimes. And Infrostrix feels really good a lot of the time. There are times where you get low on spirits and it's not really what you want to do, but you can pull Catarant. You can pull a Cryling, go into Cryovern really fast. You can pull Frigica. Like, it's such a good tech piece, and since it doesn't use your normal action, I'm actually going to put it in Broken. If there is a good Frost deck, I think it's because of Infrostrix. I'm going to put it actually above here. The problem, I think, with Frost and Daybreak is that it is susceptible to pops, and I think there's going to be a lot of people just playing a lot of pops, like EQ, PTA, Resting on Your Laurel, Chronodile, Celestlio, Curabis. I think we're going to see a lot of pops. So I think this is a card that helps you bounce back from that. But the Frost cards in general, like, they just kind of don't do a lot against pops. Okay. This guy, I don't even remember his name. I know that he mills you. This card, I'm actually going to put it in Cope. I don't think the Liths can be bad, essentially, because their stats are so good, and they're usually pretty easy to get online. But the effect on this one and the stats don't really feel like you want to play this card. It feels like there are better things to be playing. I'm going to put it in Cope because if you're playing it for its effect, you're doing something wacky. If you're playing it for its body, why not just play one cost that have good stats? Paleolith. When I first saw Paleolith, I thought, man, does Earth really need a searcher? And because we already have Rumagem, how many searchers are we really going to play? And I would say in general, it doesn't like break Earth, but I think that this is probably a better searcher than Rumagem in a lot of situations. It puts one in your grave, which can have other synergies. And its stats I prefer a little bit. I think we're gonna put it in good. It's kind of rough. Actually, I'm gonna put it higher in good because we're talking about Daybreak and not a Frostfall. And if you think about the Frostfall deck for Earth, I think it will be Fruit Boom, right? So you're playing Barabib, you're playing Drataya. Those are two Elestrals that you really want to find. Like, you want to run less Elestrals in this deck, but you really still want to see them. And I think Paleolith is a great piece for that, especially if you're going to be doing like Rise from the Ashes or something like that. I think it's good. I think it's one of the weaker links of a good deck, though. Nectar. I'm going to say this is very niche. I've played against the Wasp Ivy deck a little bit, or not the Wasp Ivy, this deck. I'm just going to put them together, I think. Well, no, I think that's almost it, but also when you pop it, and sometimes you don't care about the burn. That's my critique of this line, is that I can see why people say, man, this is good. It's burns defensively, it combos with good cards. You're building a synergistic deck, and it's easy to level up. But to me, this is easy to out, and if you have to do it by battle, it's still not that big of a deal most of the time. Moss Station. Okay, y'all. I thought Moss Station was going to be a bad card. I didn't realize it was +2. Personally, I didn't realize that. Also, I've watched it in the Elestriat, and I'm like, wow, I was wrong about this card. This card is definitely cracked. I'm going to say it's probably... I'm going to put it right here. I think that it is one of the better beaters in the game for sure. It doesn't feel like free value like Lycan. I'd still put it below Sorlet because the effect on Sorlet is a positive and the effect on this is a negative. At the same time, you can misenchant Sorlet. It's a more flexible card. And I would say, personally, I like throwing Wind Spirits in more than Earth Spirits if I'm going to be... Well, you can splash an Earthquake and run this guy, I guess. Okay. Now, a card that I really love is Lavalith. Lavalith is such a great design. It is one of the best comeback cards in the game for sure. It might be the best comeback card in the game. Certainly the best comeback Elestral, I think. Popping, good stats. I love the art on this card too. At first, when I first saw the Lavalith, I was like, Zelda's not really my thing. I'm getting Zelda vibes. I don't really like this. But then I started playing them. They feel so good. And this guy especially lets you pull back games that you had no business winning. It's a big, you have to answer it card. When somebody else lands Lavalith against me, I'm like, wow, that's a house. I'm gonna put it in game warping because there are times where you start thinking, can I build this board but also play around resting on your laurels and Lavalith? And at the same time, there are games that Lavalith will directly take over. I think that's what puts it above resting for me. I will also actually even give it above Tsunami for Daybreak specifically because of how much I think people are going to be trying Water, even if it does not end up being the meta deck. I think that there is a moderate chance that Water could be one of the best decks, though. And in that case, I think Tsunami definitely is below Lavalith, but I think enough people will be testing it where I would still rather draw a Lavalith enough times over Tsunami. That, I feel like, will be one of the hotter takes on this list. I think Gorgons here is about right. Ambro, maybe Shield, you can switch these two. Maybe you could put Tsunami. Like, I think that this whole category you can argue about a lot. I think specifically Lavalith over Tsunami is probably a hot take, but it's a fire card, so we can do hot takes. Exalt Flare, I'm going to say almost it, but the reason being, I think that Earth and Fire really need a better 3-drop to go into. It's relatively easy to get into 3-drops with Fire and Earth, but we don't have like solid ones to go into. I think that could be a really easy thing to fix in set 4. So this card could shoot up really fast, but we're talking about with the current card pool. The best thing to do with this is probably go into Blazerus, and I don't think Blazerus is like the thing you want to do in Daybreak. I mean, you have chains here, I guess, but I would rather just run Lavalith and pop their thing, and then not have to worry about counter runes like you have to with Blazerus. Uh, and then you can also do the Fruit Boom thing, which I think is a more fun direction for Fire as well. I think Exalt Flare will definitely be one of the cards that gets better in the future, and I think Fire in general has a lot of cards like that. I think we will actually see a big rotation in Fire of different archetypes. Okay, Verdolith. Interesting card. I'm going to say almost it, but, and I'm going to put it in the middle. The almost it, but for Verdolith is that it has 3 power. So even if you're walling back up and it's catching you time to catch back up, it's not putting direct pressure on like some of the other liths do. And I don't think that's really a hot take like with Lavalith. I think that just makes sense. There are a lot of high value Earth Elestrals that you do want to play, and that makes inclusion of the lith a little more difficult. Also, like, it's a lot less splashable than Lavalith because you have to play the extra Earths to recover. I think part of the power of Lavalith is that you can just throw it in T-Nexus, and it's good. Dratagua. Okay, this card has taken over so many games. I don't know if you've played enough Elestrals in Frostfall, you've been blown out by a Water Nexus deck at some point. I've blown people out with it. I've been blown out by it. Even if you're playing a deck that's okay against it, it's going to do it to you. And I think Dratagua is one of the big pieces about that. There are certainly shortcomings in Dratagua, though. The 1/4 stat line is okay, but part of the reason that you have to play beaters and Elestrals for a good deck is to get over things like Dratagua, and people know that, and they're playing the beaters for it. Additionally, if you have the setup and people know you do, then they can Gorgons you. And then the last thing, one of the fundamental issues with the water deck is if you don't get online fast enough, you can get blockaded by counter runes, an embargo, I guess. I think that Dratagua, whatever Water Nexus deck there is, it will be a key piece of. But I think that the Water Nexus deck, I think Water Beaters and Water Ascensions will be better than Water Ascension in the set, or Water Nexus in the set. I'm going to put it in good. I think the deck itself, altogether for Water Nexus, can get cracked, but it can also get embargoed. Lockagon. Wow, man, we were wrong about Lockagon, weren't we? Everybody saw Lockagon coming in set 2, and we thought it was going to be like the best card ever. We thought that Water was going to be an S tier deck and take over along with Thunder Nexus. I was definitely in that group. I thought it would be super easy to get out, and you can Rise from the Depths, play it, and then you're healing while you're doing it, so it's also good. It's got crazy stats sometimes. I do still think, though, it's going to get better in Daybreak, and that might be what pushes it over. I think I had it in Broken for Frostfall. I think that was completely wrong. I think it would be in pretty decent in Frostfall. I'm going to bump it up to good for Daybreak. I'm still going to put it... I think I'm going to put it below a consistency piece like Paleoth, but I think I'm going to put it above another combo-oriented piece like Keon. I think that it gets better with the inclusion of Kuribis, because then you have options. I've talked with people, and they said that maybe you side deck this, maybe you side it out, something like that. Cerebral? Oh, wow. Okay, first off, I love the Art of Cerebral. I've drawn this several times. It's one of my favorite Elestrals for sure. It might be in my Pantheon right now, maybe like my favorite four. It's so cute. I like its effect too, but hear me out, y'all. Spark It just got banned. So the main synergy you want to do with this card, which is play Spark It, look at their hand, rip a card, then they set cards so that you can't rip them, and then you play Cerebral, and then you pop them anyway. That's not a thing anymore. So there's like, why are people gonna set their invokes? They're scared of your P-Gust, they're scared of your Thunderstorm. Not really. I said those are underrated. People don't really play those. I'm gonna put. I think it was in very niche before the banning. I think the banning is enough to drop it down to cope. Balloon. This card is pretty interesting. When I first read it, it reads like a win more card, but it can actually do things. Especially, I wasn't thinking about Rise from the Depths. You have things like Tadpuff. You have things like they pop your foamy, you go into a galaxy, you play balloon, it gets bigger. It's pretty decent, I think. I think I'm gonna put it at pretty decent. I'm gonna put it above Mr. Whale, and I think the reason of that is when it does go off, it can feel pretty hard to break sometimes, especially if they have like back row to protect it, because they can make some pretty big Elestrals that really put pressure on you, and then it's on you. Can you break my board? Not can I break your board now? Brontaglow. Okay, we were talking earlier, and a lot of people really like Brontaglow. I've seen Brontaglow like way more than its power level. People really like this effect, and I think that's wonderful. Brontaglow is like other people's Habufin. They're playing like a worse deck because they just want to do this thing. And I actually want to see more support for like, hey, if you're playing Thunderstorm, you get bonuses. If you play Sandstorm, you get bonuses. And I think Brontaglow is a wonderful example of that. I would put it in very niche if it like had heat, but I really think you're coping if you're playing Bronzeglow. Like, I've never seen it really get me that hard. I don't think I've ever had a Bronzeglow game where like if I lost, I felt like I didn't punt something else. Platypulse, you're playing like a lower your opponent's cards matters. It can lower them to like 0 pretty quick. There are things you can do with that. I just think there's way better things you can do in Thunder, so I'm gonna put this in very niche. It's like I guess you could play it, but why? Why are you playing this? Because you want to, and I guess that puts it in very niche. Like you could put it in almost it, but there's so many good options in Thunder that I'm just gonna push it in very niche. Okay, Nemesail. This is one of my most played cards in the set. Wind goes through spirits really fast, so the recovery feels really important in Wind. This feels like an essential piece that was kind of missing in set 1. And being a receives is really good because it lets you combo with Exaltair. At the same time, though, the stat line is kind of bad. I also feel like the card advantage doesn't merit something like a P-Gust. I think P-Gust is better than this card. And I think Dratog was definitely better than this card. The 1/4 stat line is so much better. But I think it's definitely better than something like Catarant because the Wind can utilize those spirits better. And Wind will burn through the spirits typically, well, not faster depending on the deck you're building, but Wind can make more use. Like a Sorlet off of a Nemesail matters a lot more than like a Cryoling that you then have to go into a Cryovern with off of a Catarant. We're going to put Nemesail. I'm going to put it above Paleoth because it is part of the payoff of playing the Wind Nexus deck, which I think is an underrated deck. While Paleoth is just part of the deck that lets you play the other stuff you want to be doing. Findust, oh my god. Why did you make such a cute card that does this? If it was when you cast it, you get to search for an invoke, that would be past Elechic levels of broken, I think, because you just get Earthquake. If you make it search a wind one that's Tower of Wind or Tornado, that's still probably pretty bad, but the Tower of Wind could come up a lot more than it does now. As it is, I think this card is an absolute joke. And I think that if you're playing Wind Nexus and you're playing this card, and you're like, well, this card, I want one of it so I can play Tower of Wind and Tornado. Cut Tower, Wind, and Tornado, cut this card. You're going to increase your win percentage for sure. This card is a joke. I love it. I love Hibufin. It is my favorite card from Frostfall. They're my boys, but it's a bad card. Speaking about other cards that I've played more than I should have in Frostfall is a Flamemoth. Okay, so Flamemoth is... Here's the thing. Flamemoth is a card that wants you to play bad cards to make it good. And in Elestrals, that is a really big thing that should light up your radar. If a card wants you to play like invokes that don't do anything otherwise, then it's probably a bad card. And Flamemoth really wants you to play Tower of Wind, makes you want to play Nimbug, stuff like that. Cards that don't have a high impact unless you're doing this. And then it's really heavy on spirits. It can be like 5 spirits before you negate your first rune, which is the powerful thing to do with it. I'm going to put it in very niche because there are times that I've gone off with it. But I will also say there are other cards on the list that fulfill the role that it does a little bit better. I think that there are some cards that people could give another look at on the rune side. I think this is another one of those cards that rune interaction I think is being underrated. But in this instance, I've played it enough to feel like it is too expensive to merit higher on this list. Cockatoodle. This is a hard card to rank. I've played it a lot. Its effect does come up sometimes. I guess I'm just going to put it in pretty deep. Actually, probably right here is fine. It doesn't have a huge body. You can run a 1 of it. Search it with Aeolus when they do a foamy or something. Their Indus form, it helps you on that. There are cards that are above this card that you play it for. But the 4 power makes it kind of like you don't want to go into it very often. Okay. I've seen like one person play Dracodoodle and they didn't do super great. I haven't tried it myself. It reads like there are things you can do with it. I'm going to put it in very niche though because I haven't really seen much of it. Galax Air. Okay. My experience with Galax Air is that it's a 4/3. You would usually rather have Sorlet. The stat switching can be good, but it also makes it kind of tricky on defense. Like if you're switching a strong defender into attack to switch with Galax Air, that feels like you're setting yourself up to get beat up. If you're switching theirs, then I don't know. It's kind of a niche situation, I think. It's a fine beater. I think Sorlet is definitely Win's premier beater, though. I'm gonna put this in pretty decent, I think. I run 1 of it, but I usually don't pull it. I would actually pull Cockatoodle over it most of the time. So that's where I'm gonna put this card. Avalanche. If you're doing like graveyard frost things, you don't need this. Like the games go long enough, you just need to play rune removal. I'm gonna put it. Actually, I'm gonna put it in joke. I'm gonna put it below Findus because, like, theoretically, Findus could do something, but Tornado is such a bad card. Avalanche could do something, I guess. You can set up Kryling. You can set up Morfrost and Grave. You can set up for like I get why it is a card. Not a great card though. Blizzard, I think, is underrated. I think not being able to chain is pretty important. It can shut down it can shut down a couple things, and actually, it might be more. Like you can shut down Argos with this as well. But I think rune removal is very underplayed. I'm gonna put this in pretty decent. I think that the not chain ability makes it better than Thunderstorm. And I think that since aggro is what Frost wants to do a lot of the time, being able to stop what you fear might be a tsunami can be really big sometimes. I guess, well, actually, I can put it in very niche then. because you're going to be playing this in like a Frost aggressive deck, and you're going to want to play it on a turn where you're going to want to swing in and do a lot of damage. There are other cards that do similar things. I think this is one of the better ones, though. I'm going to put it above Divine Blessing. I think it is better than Divine Blessing, and there are people that are going to be like, whoa. Cornucopia? Oh my gosh. This card, I always forget about Fruit when I'm thinking about the Elestrals meta. But then somebody comes in with Fruit, draws like 100 cards, gains 100 life, and plays all their Elestrals. Um, this card specifically feels like the thing that pushes it over for me. When they start dropping these, I'm like, oh my god, they just get to do everything. So I'm actually going to say this card is broken. I think it's better than resting on your laurels power-wise, but I don't, since it's not as generic or splashable, and you really have to play around it. I'm going to put it right here in between these two. You have to, like, when you start playing against Fruit Boom, this is part of the reason why you have to be really aggressive with it. You can't, like, sit back and just hope for better. You have to, like, it puts you on the back foot. You have to answer it. Okay, Stoke the Forge, I think, is one of the huge risers in this set. Fire, I think it's way stronger in this set. Ash Rabbit can recycle this Stoke. The new Mole can search this. I think that this is one of the cards that you're running 3 of in your fire decks now. And it's like, I mean, I guess you have to find the Forge first, but who cares? This card is crazy. I'm going to put it in Cracked, though, because you do have to do a little setup first, and then you're also expending spirits when you could just have, like, you could just draw the guy. It's not as free as Lycan. Putting it below here. I think it's going to be like here because the Ash Rabbit interaction. Something like here. And it can really find you whatever piece you need, so. Rise from the Depths. This card can do some really crazy things, but you have to set up for it. And then even then, the game has to go long, and your opponent has to have like a breaking point close by for this to. But there are some times where you go, what is it? What's the full combo? It's Jatagua, Rise from the Depths, Nexus from Aphros, draw 2, gain 2, Poseidon, Nexus again, gain 2 more. Like, this is one of the cards that really lets you go crazy. I think Special Ascending is one of the stronger things you can do in Elestrals. This is a really efficient Special Ascend, but it's also pretty conditional. You really have to build your deck considering this card if you build it, but you will be pretty rewarded if you do. I'm going to put it in good below Dratagua. I don't think it's as ubiquitous in water decks as Dratagua, but I think it is a more bang for your buck than something like Galakagon. RT3, Race to the Top, is an archetype pop. And I think that we've seen in Frostfall that this is crazy. A 1-drop pop that you have control over just like can take over the game. Like, it can be miserable to play against in Elestrals. And for that, I'm going to put it in Broken. Let's see, where in Broken do we want to put it, though? I think it's definitely better than resting on your laurels. I think, actually, personally, I think that Thunder Nexus is still going to be the best deck in Daybreak. I think that Solar has a lot of consistency, but Solar also has lower stats. And I think people will really struggle to find the optimal Solar deck because they'll be so focused on suboptimal Ascension lines. So I think RT3 will still be running the meta. Next is Tower of Winds. This is a card I played a lot of at the beginning of the format. And I quickly discovered that this is a huge commitment card. It sounds really cool. You swoop in with Pin Terror or Flamemoth, and you just wreck the game from there. But what ends up happening is you draw this, and then you have like a brick in hand because you're playing multiple Ascensions, or you don't have the Celestial you want to ascend into. You don't have the Spirit to ascend from, like you don't have the Aeolus or the island. Like, you actually need like 4 pieces for this card to be a thing. Like, you need this, the Spirit Bank, the Spirit to Ascend to, and the Ascension in Hand. That is 4 cards. That is such a wombo combo. And it's also pretty expensive on Spirits. And even then, like, if you're going into Flammomoth or Pantera, sure. But, like, you can still get blown out by Counter or Invoke Runes, and it feels awful. So I'm putting this card in Cope, I think. Because it has heat, it has, like, some power, it has the idea there. But the amount of commitment you have to do is so crazy. Okay, Sandstorm. Sandstorm is one of the cards that I've played the most in this set. I have come to the conclusion it's just not good. Turning everything to defense is fine on your turn. It's not good like Tsunami because it doesn't blank attacks. Also, it's twice the spirit cost of Tsunami. That shows you how good Tsunami is, I think. The bouncing thing can be bad sometimes. Like, if they have an Astrabbit on defense turn 1, you don't want to bounce that. Being able to Ascendant Haboofin isn't enough to make this card better. And it's like, what are you cutting to play this card? And then you still have to use your attacks to get through. Like, this card is really bad. I'm going to put it, actually, I'm going to put it in Cope. I still feel like there are things you can try, but I don't think it's going to be worth it. You can do Mudlet in this set. You could do like a Mudlet Veritaqua deck and be like really rogue. This could be a piece in there that really lets you go Veritaqua, but it feels bad. Like, that card is bad. I wish it was better. Poison Nectar is a card that I actually got backlash on when I started talking about this tier list thing. Because people are higher on fruit than me, and I think that it's somewhere in the middle. I think some people overrate fruit, and I think other people underrate fruit. I think I underrate fruit. This is definitely a sideboard card. This is not a main deck card, and I wasn't thinking about it in the context of having sideboards. But in the context of having sideboards, this makes sense some, but it doesn't stop the reveals. I think that's going to be more common than the draws. It can, like, stop Nog and Fruit Boom, but, like, I think your sideboard's going to be tight too with how tight decks in Elestrals are. I'm going to put it at the bottom of pretty decent. And specifically for Fruit Boom, I think if the Barabib deck takes off, you can side in Dense Fog and this, and then you feel a lot better going into the matchup. Speaking of Fruit Boom, here's the man himself, Jataya. I've almost finished my print art that I'm planning on for him. Jataya has been pretty good in Frostfall. Ambrosia was a huge, or Cornucopia, crazy card with this. Really improves the archetype. You can do some crazy things with him, and really bursty things. I would say actually, Dratagua feels kind of the same in that it can do a lot of crazy things, but I think Drataya is easier to pop off with because you don't need multiple normal actions most of the time. The issue is you can burn through your spirits really fast if you draw wrong. Really, I think, actually similar to Tower of Winds, the biggest issue with Fruit Boom is you're looking at your Elestrals, and you are looking at how many counter runes you play, how many invokes. It's a tricky balance to navigate. So I think that's what holds Fruit back a little bit, is how hard it is to balance the deck. I think Barabib is a crazy card still with 4. Like, essentially you will be burning 4 spirits every turn. That puts them on a clock, unless they Dense Fog or Gorgon's Gaze you. But people will be playing Dense Fog and Gorgon's Gaze. So I'm going to put Jataya in the top of Cracked, I think. It's almost broken. It's almost broken. I think the thing holding it back is, again, stats. I think there's a lot to be said in Elestrals about how much good numbers matter. You get to top decks pretty frequently in Elestrals, and that's what will be your make or break when you're in top deck mode, will be your stats. We haven't gotten to the solar cards, but I think that a huge thing with the solar cards is that they are really consistent, but you're trading in points of stats here or there for it, and you will pay for that in games. There will be games you lose because you're playing a 1-4 instead of a 2-5. You're playing a 4 or a 1-4 instead of a 4-1. You're playing a 2-4 instead of a 4-2. Stuff like that. And I think that Fruit Boom can get into that kind of situation too if you fizzle, or they have the counter ruin answers. Uh, I think that's gonna hold Jataya out of being broken. I think there will be a format though, maybe set 4 where this is just like the best deck. I think I will actually have a miserable time and not play that much if this is the best deck, because I'm not big on the. I'm just gonna go through my whole deck and play some solitaire. Latagon though, it's a destroy. I think the people that are high on fruit will tell you that this is a good card. I think it's almost a good card, but using 2 normal actions is not what you want to do, and this eats away at the invoke slots that you could be playing in Fruit Boom. Uh, so like if you're playing it in Fruit Boom, it's like it's not a joke. Like I get it, I get why you're playing it, but I think that there are better things you can be doing, and that's the almost it. But Rummagem, I'm about to get some heat, y'all. I'm about to. This is a hot take. I think Rummagem being a 2/2, I I don't like it in Earth Beaters. I get why other people like it in Earth Beaters. I think Paleoloth is a better searcher, but I get why people are gonna play Rummagem. You wanna see. You don't want to ditch your other Viserys. You don't want to miss out on the other beaters in your deck, I guess. Or you could just play both, I guess. But man, Rummagem's body is so small, you have to give up tempo to play this card. And I think tempo is like an underrated thing in Elestrals. But I'm going to move it up a couple slots. I'm going to move it up to here, strictly because of its performance in recent tournaments. We've seen that Big Butts is just a good deck. Fungus, and this can help you in that deck. I don't know, like it plays better than it reads to me, I guess. But this is not why you're playing the deck. You're playing the deck for the other cards. It just helps you find the other cards that you're playing, which I think burning your normal action to search for something else to burn your normal action on is not as good as something like Elechick, where you're burning your normal action to find something else that lets you drastically improve your board state without burning your normal action on it. Clovey, we got Bloom, which lets you Nog. We have Equilinx, which should let you draw a card and pop a ruin, but Clovey stats are really bad. Also, like we have Mudlet now. Like we've gotten signs that maybe this isn't the direction we want to take Earth. The Earth Nexus deck is kind of a weird spot. Like I typically, when I'm playing Earth Nexus, I don't really plan on getting to keep my cards out that long, and Clovey feels like you want to proc it at least twice, maybe 3 times before you're really happy playing it. I'm gonna put almost it. I think there will eventually be a Clovey deck. I don't think Bloom makes it. I think Clovey is a little worse than Vertilith, because it doesn't have the raw stats on its own, and I think the raw stats are better than the card draw. Tectorus. I think Tectorus is another big loser of this set. It like Dense Fog, just wow. There's a lot of cards that's just gonna really affect. I think Earth Beaters in general is gonna be weaker in this set because it's not getting wildly improved. I think Fruit Boom is a big focus of Daybreak for Earth, but other decks are getting a little more love. I think that it will still be a good beater for Earth, but I think Earth is going to be a lot worse. Where we're going to put this? I'm going to put it below the Earth Searcher. I'm going to put it below Kione, above Eruption. Eruption is part of Fruit Boom, I guess. I mean, it is. It's one of the win cons. I think also Ash Rabbit with Eruption can go kind of hard. But Tectorus will still be a beater. I just feel like that deck gets worse, and like it's one of the top decks now, so getting worse doesn't make it that bad itself. But I think its positioning, losing to invokes, losing to counter runes, losing to divine runes, holds it back from how great it can be sometimes. Equilinx, however, I think Equilinx is one of the main cards of why you play Earth. The rune removal is crazy. I think it's better than Endless Form removal for sure. I think it's better than Moss Station. I would actually say usually it's. I put it right next to Sortlet. I think it's better than Lycan. Because it's like Lycan gives you a lot of free value, but Lynx can start taking over some games. There are games where they have a shield and like a tsunami, and then you just start popping their back row, and then they have to go in panic mode because they were counting on that going through, and suddenly you have tempo and they don't, and they have to top deck an answer. And Equilinx can really take over games like that. But it is pretty situational, and having the 4 attack can make it susceptible sometimes, especially if you're using it as your aggro piece, which sometimes that, like, it feels more like you want to use this card as your aggro piece than P-Gust, because having to use a Spirit Bank with Equilinx means that it's a higher commitment play than the P-Gust play. So it has better stats, but you really feel like you need it to go further to merit how many spirits you have to use for it, because you also have to use other cards to hold the spirits for the Nexus. That said, I am putting it above P-Gust because I think that the Earth Beaters, like, there's a bigger suite of Earth Beaters, so you can be more consistently with your offensive pressure. And then, like, the Paleoth and the Rummagem are less spirit committal than an Aeolus. This series, I think, has fallen off a lot in Frostfall. It's still one of the top decks, I guess. But it doesn't answer a lot of what Frost does. It's not going to answer a lot of what Solar does. It doesn't answer what T-Nexus does. I'm going to put it... I think I'm just going to put it in good now. That's crazy, isn't it? But, like, if you're losing to Viserys, you're not playing... Like, if Viserys shuts you out of a game, you did not really play a game of Elestrals these days. If you're not playing counterplay that can stop this from happening, then you're not playing you're playing suboptimal Elestrals, I guess. Because Gorgons, Shield, Tsunami, Earthquake, Resting, RT3, Sorlet, like almost all the cards above this card can either help you find an answer or directly answer Viserys. And I think that there's so many options to answer it that it's it's the just play removal, but also there are beaters that can hit over it pretty consistently. And I don't know. Specifically though, I think that Chariot with Viserys is a little underplayed. I think in set 1 that was a very underplayed strategy. I think Rabbit set Chariot, and then turn 2 Viserys was one of my favorite plays in set 1. I don't think that that's good in set 2. I think that there are too many bodies that are bigger than Viserys for that to be good. Pandasin. Fruit Boom is getting better. I think that Pandasin will be a big improver in there. Even if you're not playing Fruit Boom, you're just like playing Fruit with Barabib, or you're just playing like Nog with Barabib, you're definitely playing like Pandasin in that deck, right? The cost to use its effect, though, I think makes it one of the weaker pieces of that deck. I think we're going to put it in pretty decent. No, we're going to put it in good. We're going to put it at the bottom in good and have some trust. It's consistently gotten a little better as we've gotten more cards that it can interact with. Blazerus is actually a really interesting option in Daybreak. We saw that with Exalt Burn, or Exalt Flare, the main target to pull with it was Blazerus. So I would assume that with Fire getting a lot better, Blazerus does get better. The question is, does Fire get better in a way where you're cutting Blazerus and just running value like other decks? I think the answer is maybe, but I would still think that Blazerus is one of your better pressure pieces. I don't think it's as good as Necrof because of how much setup you have to do for it. I'm going to put it... I think the Earth Searchers... Man, the Earth Searchers are like such a wall. I think that the Earth Searchers are a really defining point in the format. Like, what do you think is better than an Earth Searcher? I think Blazerus is better than an Earth Searcher. With how much better Fire is getting, and Blazerus being pretty easy to make in Fire. Um, I'll give it above Nemesail too. I'm gonna leave it below Nog though. I think that Nog is gonna continue getting better. I also think Nog will be okay to play in Solar as well. You got the recovery and the searching the top and then drawing cards as well. I think kind of combos. Kindleo is a massive winner in this set from how much more powerful Fire is getting. Ash Rabbit coming is a huge boost for Kinleo. That's a crazy receive for Kinleo to Nexus to, and it can help you get answers to protect Kinleo as well. I think this is one of the biggest winners of this set for sure. I exactly where I think it's going to land. I think it's still going to be in good. I don't think it's going to be the crazy part of the deck that it's doing, but I think it's going to be like one of the threatening parts. I think it's going to be one of the parts where uh, you get a little nervous playing against Fire because what if they have it? So I'm going to put it between, I'm going to put it directly below Necrof. I think Necrof is still the beater of the deck, and I think that is a really core element in a deck that wants to push damage through. But I think it like puts on so much more pressure now that we have Ash Rabbit, and it's so much more consistent now that we have Wormacole. Warmite, I guess, is a loser in the set then, because like your fire deck is about to get a lot tighter, and it already wasn't seeing like a lot of play. You would see somebody kick around with it a little bit every here and there. I'm gonna put it in almost it, but and the almost it but on this one will be it is almost there, but its defensive prowess is too weak. Infurix could also be a huge winner of this set. It's kind of hard to say. Um, we're getting more interaction with the underworld. The problem with Infurix, in my experience, is like a 3/3 is kind of mixed. I love my Stellar. Black Phoenix is probably my favorite card I own in any game right now. But the card itself, it feels expensive for what it does, and its power level doesn't feel too high anyway. Um, Fire, like I'm saying, is getting a lot better though. I'm seeing Leonite coming up on the list. That could be an option, I guess, especially if Fruit is getting that much better. Uh, I'm gonna put it below Poison Nectar. I think that Infurix is gonna be less playable than Poison Nectar. I think Poison Nectar is a solid sideboard option. I totally get why you're playing that. Infurix, I'm like, is that really the best thing you can do? I think it can put on pressure. It can set up a Blazer. It's really easy. It can set up a Leonite. It can. I think it will also get better in the future as we get more Nexus or more Ascensions for Fire. Kind of like a Foamy thing, but a little worse than Foamy. Okay, Volcaries. Okay, so here's the thing. Okay, so Volcaries you would think would go right next to Tectorus, but it's all about context for the set. I think Earth is falling because it is going in a different direction than the popular Earth deck. I think Fire Volcaries is right in line with Fire's plan. You're getting spirits now. You are building up. You were stalling out. And I think Volcaries is going to be one of your definitely beaters. Also, you have to consider that Fire doesn't have as great beaters on the 1 stages. So I actually think Volcaries is going to be way better than Tectorus. I actually think that it's going to be definitely better than the Earth Searchers. It's going to be plus tempo, not minus tempo. If they do burn like a effect removal or a pop on it, then you feel good about that because you only invested 1 spirit in him. I think I'm gonna put him probably above Blazerus is the hard one. Um, I think we can keep moving him up. How high can we get him? I think we're going to land him right here. He's good on his own. You don't have to rely on Rise from the Depths. But he doesn't pop off as hard as Drutogwa will. And he's a lot more susceptible to suppression than Drutogwa. Cinder. I'm going to say Cinder, you're coping. I think a mill deck, if it happens, will not be with something so slow. I think with mill, what you want to do is mill them as quick as you can. And this feels like 1 for 3, like 1 spirit for 3 mil is not where you want to be. Leonite has been pretty bad all the Elestrals so far. You would think that it would get better with like with RT3. Maybe Stoke the Forge getting better makes it better. Maybe Nog seeing more play makes it better. Uh, I It's not there though. I'm gonna put it almost there, but because I feel like there will be a format where this card is really good, but we're not there. I think that the almost there, but it needs a meta where Invoke is meta instead of Counter Ruins. And I think when it gets there, it will be above these. I think also it's a good sideboard option against Fruit Boom for fire. Um, you can also play it a little against Solar, I guess, to hit the first light. I don't know. There are better things you could be doing in fire for sure. Sluggle. Okay, no cap. I think people are highly underrating Coastalith. I think that is a pretty good value Elestral. Sluggle is one of the cards that you can play with Coastalith to get value. That doesn't feel great though. A recovery on its own isn't that bad. You can do things like get it with Babloon. You can search it with Foamy. You can. There's a lot of ways to replay Sluggle. At the same time, though, its stat line is so low, you're going negative in tempo to recover those spirits, and usually you're not gonna feel great about that. Especially if you have to use your normal summon on this and you're like top decking. This card feels really rough. I'm gonna put it in pretty decent. Definitely worse than Catarant, I think. Worse than these guys. I'll put it above Poisoned. I think that it will be underrated for sure. But I think like there are games where it could be good. Foamy? Whoa, okay, Foamy is a really interesting card. Spectrus, if it gets much play, Foamy's going to be really rough to play. Also, Dense Fog, shuts Foamy down. You got Gorgon's Gaze, you got Cockatoodle. You have, I mean, I guess you could always bounce it with Sandstorm. You can PTA, you can Earthquake it. There's so many outs to Foamy, which kind of make it a dead card. But Foamy can also just like swing in on its own to find Galaxy, which is fine on its own. And also you'll be able to find Eddie now. You can find Veritaqua on some really tricksy boards. It's definitely one of the linchpins why you playing water. But it's definitely very outable. I think it's going to fall somewhere in good for that. I think Foamy feels better than the Earth Searchers, and especially now that we're going into a format where I feel like water is rising, Earth is receding, we're going to put Foamy above the Earth Searchers. Typhlant, I think, is a big winner this set. I think Coastalith is a good card with Typhlant. You could play like a Typhlant Turbo deck where it's Coastalith, Rise from the Depths, and Atlantis. There are probably better things, like there are definitely better things you can do, but Hand Rip is, good, and I think that this gets better with the set. I don't think people are going to play it. I should put it lower than I am going to put it, but I think it's better than Pandasin, worse than Eruption. I think Eruption has a high feeling impact on the game. I think Typhlant, if you build around it, can have a high impact. But you're going to lower the power of your deck if you're trying to play Typhlant, when Eruption's usually going to be the worst card in the deck for itself. Veritaqua. I think Veritaqua is going to rise. I think that we're going to see a lot of Corvishine. I think we're going to see tons of Astrabbit still. I think we are going to see Ash Rabbit a bunch. I think we're going to see Small Tuga. We're going to see a lot of defense Elestrals, and Veritaqua is a great answer to those for cheap. And it's searchable by Foamy. It's searchable by Pelquarius if we really want to do that. Uh, I think it's actually going to stay right here, though. I think P-Gust Rune Removal is better than Veritaqua. I think most of the time you would rather have a beater, so you're not going to play a lot of Veritaqua, but with P-Gust, I think, like, really, you could go 3 of P-Gust if you alter how you play around it. Okay, next is Tadpuff. I think Tadpuff is also going to be a card that is underplayed. It is a super easy way to get to Curabis. It is an easy way to send into Coastalith if it's not going to be online. It can get you to Chronodile pretty quick. Like you can go Tadpuff, Poseidon, Chronodile. I don't think that's what people are going to do. I don't think that's what people are going to try, but I think that it will be good. I actually think it'll be more bursty and more combo heavy than like Eruption. I think there are more powerful things you can do with Tadpuff than Eruption, but I don't think people are going to be doing that. But I'm still going to put it in the good category because I think if you played it like that, you would feel that. Mustation. This is a foamy target. It can get switched from Galaxy. It can be a 6-guy if you need, but it's kind of expensive to use it like that. It's a decent wall. Uh, is this what you want to be doing in water? Maybe. I think it's worse than Small Tuga though because it's like wants you to burn spirits instead of just searching you a card. And the difference between 5 and 6 is a lot less than 5 and 4. Uh, I think it's probably gonna be worse than Tectorus. I think Earth Beaters is. I think we're gonna put it here under Tadpuff. I think Water wants to be like a combo-y Ascension deck if you're playing it like that. I think there's going to be like 3 distinct water decks now. I think there'll be like Water Beaters, Water Ascension, and Water Nexus. I think those will be 3 separate decks. I think Water Beaters raw power doesn't come from a station though, but Tadpuff would be one of the raw power of Ascensions. Aphros is like the raw power of Water Ascension. I think Aphros along with Veritagua is what makes that deck crazy. Aphros with Poseidon is pretty good. Aphros under an Atlantis is good, and the runes are seeing like, and the stadiums are seeing more play with the invokes. So I actually think that my initial thought was Dratagua was going to be better than Aphros, but I think Aphros is actually better than Dratagua. Thinking in the context of Daybreak, I think that if you're playing like a Curabis turbo deck, Aphros definitely makes it in there, and I think that's one of the stronger pieces because you're probably playing Atlantis and Poseidon anyway to do the things with Curabis. Um, I think I'm going to put it above Small Tuga because I think it is one of the things that really makes the deck churn. I think it's one of the things that makes the deck feel viable. I think without Aphoros, it wouldn't feel very viable. Yeah, it's a 1/4, but drawing 2 cards is a real boon. And if you're playing Poseidon and Atlantis, water isn't as uh, gluttonous on expending your spirits as other elements can be. Galaxy. This is like the premier card of water beaters. I'm going to actually put it. Hmm, I think I'm going to put it cracked above Cryovern. I actually think that no, I'm gonna or not Cryoling. I don't think Cryovern's on this. It might be on this one. I'm gonna put Galaxy right below Cryoling. I think it's better than Sorlet. I disagree with Spicy Sausage on that, but I do really appreciate the commentary on that, and I think it was really interesting. I think what it does for the Water Beaters deck is um, not understatable. I think it completely makes that deck, and also turning online. Like there's so many tricksy plays you can do with it. It does lose out on like Gorgon's Gaze. I think Death Fog will also really hurt it. I think Argo will blow out some games with Galaxy, but I think Argo will see will be not meta. I think Argo will be like rogue contender. So I think that Galaxy is still just going to be one of the answer me cards. I think it's going to be one of the premier beaters. I think Atlantis, making it a 6 is pretty strong. For sure. And searchable by Foamy immediately, in a way that, yeah, it uses your normal, but you get it on field, unlike the Earth searchers. Boombat. Not seeing much play. You see it. I'll see somebody pop it out every now and then, and usually when I do, it does okay. So I feel like we might be underrating Boombat. I lost it though. Where did it go? Oh, Boombat. Here it is. Um, I think it might be underrated, for sure. Losing the Thunder Nexus card makes this worse, I think, for sure. And it's not a searcher, so you can do better things than Thunder. I'm gonna put it in pretty decent. I think I'm gonna put it below. I think I'm gonna put it above Catarant. Catarant really underperformed for me when I was playing Catarant, but like I kept thinking, man, I can do this with Catarant, and then it just kept not working. A Sonicore is a card that on and off sees play depending on the meta. Um, Sonicore could see play if like Pandolins takes over the meta, for example, or if people just try taking PTA with Ash Rabbit over and over again. Um, I think there are definitely better things you can do in Thunder. Artifacts are getting better that can also affect this. I'm just gonna put it at the top of pretty decent. If you land this, you're trying to end the game with it because you don't want to give them a turn to use an invoke on it. But at the same time, like it definitely can close out some games. You're in Thunder, so you have the support to get to this. Um, there are better things you could be doing, but like if you land a Sonic Core, everybody's gonna freak out. Full Tempest. Okay. Here's one of the things that I love talking about when I'm talking about Daybreak. I love talking about Arcalith and being able to go Arcalith into Voltempest if they don't have an immediate answer for it. And I think there'll be games where they don't have an immediate answer. You go Arcalith, pop one of their guys, and then the next turn you go Voltempest, and then uh, you feel ahead when you felt behind 2 turns ago. You can also run the Griffuse line and like really go in on Voltempest. I don't think many people are going to do that. I think people are going to be more excited about Solar and play that a lot. I think there's a lot of recency bias in Elestrals where people want to play the new hot thing, or they want to default to whatever has won the last tournament or the last 2 tournaments. So I don't think it'll see a lot of play, but I think it is going to be really good. I think it'll be super strong compared to other things you could be doing. Uh, Honestly, it might be better than Phosphocell, even though Phosphocell is really easy to get out into. Um, I'm gonna stand by Voltempest and my hot Voltempest take. I'm gonna put it in cracked. I'm gonna put it above Airtaqua, below P-Gust. I think P-Gust is super underrated, y'all. Um, okay, since we're here with Spark It, we can talk about what I think about the banning. I have mixed thoughts. I think banning Spark It a year ago, I'd have been thank you so much. But banning Spark It now, when we've seen Glimbat in the next set, feels kind of rough. Banning the Nexus user of T Nexus, which is the best deck, feels kind of rough when that is like the deck that the majority of people have invested into because it's the strongest deck. Uh, of course, me saying this has summoned a thunderstorm. There is now a thunderstorm outside, so sorry if you hear thunder. Um, I think it will eventually probably come back, or they'll make a version like what they were talking about, where it's at random. I don't think repeatable discard is a really healthy thing for TCGs. We've seen a lot of games cut away at that. Um, but I guess we're gonna have to put it in joke now that it's banned. I love doing this. Sorry to the people that we've had discussions about, like, man, if your favorite Elestrals spark it, you're like crazy. And then there have been multiple people to say their favorite Elestral spark it. Sorry if your favorite Elestral spark it. That feels kind of bad. I think you'll get another version of it for sure. And I think eventually it can come off the ban list. Just have more answers for it. Quackle. Interesting card. I think that Thunder can be kind of spirit heavy, so some recovery's not bad. There a million things you would rather do than Quackle, especially in this upcoming set. I'm gonna put it below Sluggle because the opportunity cost of what else you could do with Quackle feels higher than with Sluggle. I think with Sluggle, like, it combos with stuff that you might want to do. Quackle, it's not really going to combo with what you want to do. You'll have to veer left to do it. Okay. Dang, this is a while. Thank you if you're still with me, if you're still listening to this. I really appreciate you. I hope you're having a great day. Feel free to pause, go get some water, come back to the video later. Feel free to break it up however you want. But I appreciate you. Okay, Jolton. Jolton is a crazy card. I don't, like, this is another one of the cards that I just don't understand how it slipped through. How did Thunder get Astrabbit and Jolton and Elechick? Like, searching in card games is just one of the best things you can do. It adds to your consistency while also growing your card advantage. And then Jolton searching a stadium, like Olympus, makes it A5 body, which is the premier stat line in the game. Also, in set 2, we got the invokes that are based on the stadiums, which make Jolton like a paramount player in those decks. I think that RT3, T-Nexus version, is still going to be the best deck in the game, honestly, because of how much searching it has. And I think Jolton is a piece of that. So I'm going to be putting Jolton... I'm going to put it below Infrostrix. I think that the pop-off from Infrostrix is like the cool, good thing about Frost. I think there are like other things in Thunder that can carry Thunder. I don't think Jolton's the best piece of Thunder. And Jolton goes in other decks, though. I don't think it definitely does not go in as many decks as Elechick. Searching your Divine is better than searching your Stadium in almost every deck. But searching the Stadium can make it a 5 guy on its own. I guess it's worse than searching a Zeus and being a 7. But I think, man, that crazy Thunder got all these. Astrabbit, this is going to be another card, like, people are questioning why this didn't get banned, but Spark It did get banned. I actually really agree with that. Spark It is, or Astrabbit is really fun to play. It doesn't matter if you're splashing for it. Like, yeah, it's kind of an eye roll that you played in every deck, but it is a fun card to play. It gives you a lot of options. It gives you a lot more volition to control the RNG in the game, and I think that's healthy for the metagame where you're only drawing 5 cards and the cost of mulligan is kind of like you feel it. So I agree that Spark It could be banned for feeling bad, and then Astrabbit remains for feeling good. I just would rather see Glimbat play out too, or hold off on Glimbat longer. I think Astrabbit is definitely game warping. Now the question is, where are we going to put it? I'm definitely putting it above Tsunami because I still feel like Water's going to get played more this set. I'm going to put it above Lavalith because I've played so many games where I just play Rabbit and remove everything they play. And then just keep rabbiting. Get a bunch of spirits on Rabbit, and then when they're like low on cards, I'm up on cards. I just start attacking with Rabbit when it has like 3 or 4 spirits. And like there have been games where I just win where that's enough. That's more takeover than a Lavalith, and it's less investment than Lavalith, and it's less conditional than Lavalith. I'm going to leave Rabbit here because people aren't playing enough rune removal. I think if people were playing more rune removal, splashing for things like P-Gust or like playing more T-Storm, playing some other cards we'll talk about later, I think Shield would move down in raw power, but I think since people aren't playing that, Shield is like super strong. It blows you out most of the time. Arrowmare. Did y'all realize that this has a 5 stat? Because I didn't. I played against it one day. I think it's actually an underrated card just because it has a 5 stat. Um, including that it's 5 defense because it's a good defensive card to get you into your wind ascensions. And I think wind ascensions aren't like bad. I think they're fine. Um, that said, it's just a body. It's just a 4/5 body. And I think getting Verituka might eat the slot that this would have gone in. I think that the slot that this would have gone in is, okay, you're running 3 Sorlet. What is the next big body you want to play? Maybe Arrowmare. Like, that could have been the card you want to play. But now that we have Verituka, I think that's harder to say. I'm going to put it... I'm actually going to put it here. I think it is underrated. Like, if you play this card against me, I'm not going to be embarrassed. I feel like other people, if you do that too, they will. But I get it. I get it. These Ascensions. Now, here's one of the ones we're going to talk about. Actually, we're going to pull them both up here. There is Stratamoth and there is Falacane. Stratamoth is a 3 to pay to bounce. Falacane is a... it's 2 to pay to bounce. I think that Falacane, way better. I think that card is actually, like, actively way better than people think it is. I think it's easy to get into, and then I think if decks are relying on their counter runes exclusively to interact with their opponent, like if they're skipping out on Earthquake, or they don't have the resting, or they just don't draw them, this card can really take over a game. I don't feel the same way about Stratamoth because of the 3 spirits. It's harder to get into. You have to play around it more. And then when it gets destroyed eventually, because it will eventually get destroyed, you're going to feel worse about it. So I'm going to put the Stratamoth in almost it, but the almost it will be that Falacane is better. I'm going to put it actually pretty high in here, though. I'm going to put it right here above. I think it's better than Morozaglo. Yeah, I think people really don't give it credit. I'm going to put this one. I kind of feel like it's better than Lockagon because it doesn't rely on other cards. Well, you have to get it out somehow, but once you have it out, like I've had games where it's been used against me, and I'm like, wow, that is really strong, huh? And I've had games where I've played it, and I'm like, dang, they just don't have an answer for that. Crespore, also underappreciated. I think though, like, what it does is fundamentally more fair, more interactable than other cards, like Falacane, and you don't want to bog down your deck with too many Ascensions, so I think you would rather play that one. I think Infurix is probably right about, like, above it. There are things you can do with that. Okay, Exaltair. This card is crazy. I think in the context of Daybreak, it's going to go wild. You're going to Nexus to your Toxus Worm and burn 3 now. That feels wild. And already, there are so many games where you're getting to that 7-8 range and your opponent's at the 7-8 range. If it's close, like you're trading blows, Exaltair can be that, like, haymaker that you need to pull ahead and really put them on it. I've had some really tricksy games. I can't go super high because there have been some tricksy games where, like, I just play it wrong, manage my spirits wrong, and I just don't have it at the end. And part of it is, like, that stat line is kind of low. And I'm glad the stat line is low because if this was super good and people would just sit behind it, it would feel pretty bad. I think it is better than Nemasail. I think it's better than Blazerus, y'all, for sure. I think it's less powerful than Rise from the Depths, but I think not a lot of people are playing Rise from the Depths. I think I'm going to land it right here. But overall, I think that you see my core of Wind here. It's the Sorlet, which is cracked. The Pigus is cracked. The Exaltair is good. The Nemasail is good. I think this is what makes Wind viable. I think Wind is like a B plus, A minus tier deck in Daybreak. And I think it's because of those cards and also the addition of Verituka. I think now that you have a secondary beater along with Sorlet, sometimes 3 beaters in a game when you can tutor them pretty easily. Like sometimes you do just go through all of them and you just need another one. And I think Verituka is a good addition there. Maybe just 1 or 2 of. We haven't gotten to that on the list though. We actually kind of have a lot of cards left on here. Wow. Next we have Peliquarius. If you're playing Peliquarius, Wind, Water, you're playing expensive cards that don't synergize with each other. I would put it in very niche if there were like synergies between the two, but there really aren't. So I'm gonna put Cope. You're probably playing this if you're playing like a Windwater deck, I guess. I think it's supposed to be like Small Tuga, but Small Tuga has like the big stat with it, and I think that's why people play Small Tuga for sure. Earthquake, okay. I think Earthquake is part of the amazing design of Elestrals and part of the rough design of Elestrals. It's amazing because it really forces you to splash, and it's a heavy splash. If you're running 3 Earthquake in your deck like you want to be because it's like the most efficient or the cleanest removal, you don't have to jump through any hoops, it's just killing the thing, then Earthquake is definitely the best card, and that's why it's played in a majority of decks. At the same time, it makes you really consider your Spirit deck because that's 6 Earth you might want to go through. Typically, you see 3 or 4 Earth because people are playing enough Ambro to heal back up to the Earth. And I like also, though, that since you're playing that Earth, it doesn't feel that bad. If you just want to, like, if there's another Earth card you like that you just want to throw in, you can. I think it's like Astrabbit in that, where it's a positive thing to feel like, hey, I want to splash a little bit. It makes you feel smart, it makes you feel considered. You have the breathing room to do so, but it also adds complexity to the play because toward the end of the game, you're thinking, well, I have a chance to top deck Earthquake, and if I top deck Earthquake, that really outs the situation. So I'd rather leave it up. But great card design, rough card design though, because it is so efficient that it's hard to think of like, well, where do you take removal from here? I think Earthquake is probably. I'm gonna put it as Game Warping for sure. I think its raw power is kind of up here. I'm gonna put it a little lower. It's not responsive on your opponent's turn. You have to splash for it. You have to change how you play for it. You can't really play around it, so you're not really thinking about it in that sense. Yeah, I think we're gonna land in Game Warping. I think it's better than Astrabbit because it kills Astrabbit, right? That's the best out to Astrabbit. Bag of Winds. You can search this with Argo now. You can play Sprouter and Argo and then whatever artifacts you want and go ham, and this is probably the best one to do with it. Honestly though, I don't think the artifacts are the good thing about that. I think the surprise and the build-up are. But Bag of Winds itself, outside of that, it's probably almost it. But now we have the butt. I guess we're gonna put it in Pretty Decent. Where in Pretty Decent, like it can definitely take over games. I think I'm gonna put it between Chains and Boombat then, because like there are sometimes with Chains where you're like, man, that's a really solid card. Just like there will be games where you see a Bag of Winds and you're like, oh man, there's no way to get over that. But then there's other games where they go Bag of Winds and you're like, I just play Shield now, right? Like I just shield it away, and now you're out a card and 2 more spirits. I think it's better than Boombat though, because like it can be pretty threatening. Rise from the Ashes is a card that I've heard a little bit more about. There are things you can do with it. The thing with Rise from the Ashes is always just how expensive it is. It's so many spirits to use. It's a cool card. They're like you can wombo combo. Uh, tricky card. I'm gonna put it at the bottom of Pretty Decent. You can do a thing or two with Rise from the Ashes, and it can do some stuff. but it's so expensive and it feels bad to play in your deck because of that. And you kind of have to play considering it. You have to play considering that you might need that many spirits for it. Um, and you have to play like you have to wait for whatever you're searching for in your grave to get there. It can go in things with like key Elestrals that you really need, or it can go with like big Elestrals, but you're paying such a premium for them. Altar of Stars. Um, I think Altar's power is directly related to how strong Nexus is at the time. The better Nexus feels because you have to have like two spirits on the, or you have to have two cards with spirits on the board to play this. And so you're usually thinking like a Nexus Bank and a Nexus Target, um, or just something you want to hold spirits on. If Nexus is bad, then Altar is not as strong as it could be. If Nexus is good, then Altar is one of the best cards in the game. And I think Team Nexus and Solar Nexus will be like the top two decks, so I think that Altar of Stars is going to be one of the best cards in the game. Personally, I think that since it's like a cantrippy feeling effect, like you're doing a couple of little things that can all have big impacts on the game, um, I think it's going to be. I think I'm going to put it below Lavalith, above Tsunami still. I think, man, water is really hurting Tsunami this set. Um, I I think when the meta stratifies, Tsunami will move back up. I'm thinking like big, like 2-3 weeks into Daybreak. I think people are still going to be running more water than they should be. Panda's Box. Okay, I've actually played a lot of Panda's Box recently, and I've left with mixed taste in my mouth. It feels good when they want to search and you just deny it. That does feel good. The problem is, and you're okay paying that many spirits for it. Like, that's fine. The problem is you just spent a card on that, and usually the cards they're searching with, I guess this might change with Stoke the Forge and First Light coming in, but the cards they're searching with are usually like Elichick or Jolton, um, Rummagem, where they've already gotten, like, if you're trading a card for that, they still have an Elestral on the field, so you went down an advantage for that. It also, like, does not help you build your own tempo to apply pressure. Uh, I'm gonna put it almost it, but almost it, but they still usually have something after you play it. They usually have better follow up than you do. I'm gonna put it. I think I'll put it between Latagon and Exalt Flare. Helios Chariot Ride, I think, is a card that could use more experimenting. I think that maybe it's not there to break the meta right now. Um, I think the thing that Helios Chariot Ride needs is more cards like Viserys that have good on destroy triggers. You can do it with like Blazerus or Necrof as well, I guess, but those don't feel as powerful as Viserys' raw destroy a card ability. I think since there aren't many effects like that, there's not much reason to play like a high spirit cost delay card like Helios Chariot Ride. It's also not gonna like pop the cards, it's just gonna delay them. So like you'll still have to deal with them unless you really like accrue all your value that turn. For that reason, I'm gonna put it very niche. I think it could rise in the future. I'm gonna put it below Flammoth. I think Flammoth deals with counter ruins in a way that feels more impressive. Uh, I think Helios Chariot Ride is a card that could definitely get better in the future, but right now, as is, I think that you're playing it exactly for Viserys most of the time, and even at that, it's like there are probably better things you could do in the Daybreak meta, like, or there definitely are better things you could do. Uh, and I feel like Viserys is a big loser in this set. Toxion, I think Team Nexus is still going to be one of the best decks in the game. I guess if you wanted to do the Volt Tempest deck I was talking about, this could be a consideration. You could do Toxion and Toxiswarm in the same deck and do like Wind, Thunder, Altar of Stars, and burn them down as quick as you can. Uh, it's like a good burn piece. The 4-1 has felt bad to me pretty frequently when I play T-Nexus. I tend to cut this more than other people, so I'm going to put it a little higher than I would for my personal rating. I think I'm going to put it above Drutagwa because of Thunder's raw power. I think it's going to be a little rougher now that you don't have Spark It for sure. You have Larvacell, I guess. So there is a whole brand new T-Nexus deck that we don't really know how it's going to perform yet. But it's definitely a good card. I would just put it lower in good than most people, but I'm putting it there because I trust other people and they're running more copies of it than I do. Next we're gonna go Hydrake. I'm including Twindra here. I think it's good. I think the problem with Hydrake for me is I like Wind Toolbox Nexus. And to play Hydrake, it really feels like you want like a 3-1-1 or a 3-2-1 or a 3-2-2. And that's a lot of Elestral spots to eat, and the more Elestral spots you eat, the less Aeolus toolbox power there is. So I prefer the toolbox version, but there's definitely a little bit of power behind the normal version. There's more pops in the game, but you know, pops have already been a problem with Hydrake. I think it's gonna feel worse because of that. There's also gonna be more recursion, which I like recursion of pops with like Ash Rabbit and Pandalint, and I think that's gonna hurt Hydrake a lot too. I still think it's good though. I think it's gonna be better than Tectorus this format. Let's see. Penterror can have a different rating because you can do things like Tower of Wind, or you can Nexus from Exaltair and then go into Penterror out of nowhere. Do you want to though? Do you want to? I'm gonna say it's worse than like just playing the Twindra and just going into that and not worrying about it. Um, and I think it's still the weaker win strategy right now. I think it's the best 3 cost in the game still, I get. Well, the best base set 3 cost. Okay. We are almost to Daybreak cards. Almost. Aeolus. Ooh, Aeolus is... Man, this is a hard card to rate. It is absolutely instrumental to playing Wind Nexus. It is a card that gives you a lot of value. It is a really hard card to play because it is such a card that like puts a carrot under a box, and then when you get under the box, it snaps the carrot away, and you are trapped. You're trapped in a situation where you don't have enough spirits to do what you need to do. When if you would have just played it out in top deck, you wouldn't have needed the more efficient Elestrals anyway. That said, I think being able to find Verituka instead of Sorlet is a good thing. I think being able to find Toxic Swarm is also going to be a good thing. So I think when Nexus is shifting around in power, the deck list is going to look different. It's hard to say where Aeolus is going to be. I think, though, the format's going to be a little faster. I think there's going to be a little more, like, Fruit Boom's going to add some heat. The new fire cards are going to add heat. The Wind Toxic Swarm is going to add heat. The More Frost Bat will add heat. You know, I think this format's going to be a tad bit faster, which I think makes Aeolus a little worse. You're going to be dropping down in spirits even faster. It's still got to be at least cracked, right? And it's better than P-Gust, right? Because you can search for P-Gust or Sorlet. I actually think it might be worse than Sorlet for the raw stats, like, because you're going minus so many spirits when you're using it to search. I'm gonna put it below Equilinx. I think Equilinx can pop Aeolus. That's a big argument for Equilinx to be a better card than Aeolus. The reason being, like, Equilinx frequently can be used to pop Divine Runes that were left sitting out. It just burns away those spirits, and Wind is like the biggest perpetrator of just leaving a bunch of spirits on board that they didn't really utilize. So yeah, that's where we're gonna land Aeolus. Card I've played way too much of. Sprouter. interesting card because of all the new runes. I think you can play Earth runes. I don't think many people are. I think most people that play TCGs are really burnt out by seeing like, oh, this is a card that you spend extra spirits to make another card better, and they both like, but you get blown out more when it gets blown out. That is pretty bad in almost every TCG. Um, but this is a searcher that does card value. We'll see. It's definitely way better now, but you're still essentially encouraging yourself to play more bad cards or play more bricks, more cards that don't swing the momentum in your favor. I think you have to be really cautious when deck building this. I think it's going to be good though. It could be like a 3-7 if you go Necklace of Harmonia, 3-8 if you have like Feloy Forest too. You can pull your Golden Fleece. You can pull Trident of Poseidon still. You can pull Poison Tunic if that's all you need. I think it's worse than a lot of the cards here though. I'm gonna put it here. I think it's better than Eruption. It goes positive in card value. I'm being mean to Eruption. I'm gonna get destroyed by Eruption a couple times. I can already tell it. Uh, but I think it's worse than a lot of these cards here. Demeter is one of the cornerstones of Earth Nexus. Earth Nexus isn't like the reason you play Earth, but Equilinks with Demeter is definitely super strong. And it can let you like really out, like Demeter lets you out a lot of other situations in non-Earth Beater decks. Or Earth Beater decks like, hey, they dropped a Lavalith. Demeter can be one of the premier ways that you just answer that. Um, I would say it's definitely weaker than Zeus. I would say it's weaker than Aeolus. It's not like as key of a piece of that deck, but I'm leaning toward this direction. I think it's gonna be better than Will Tempest. You know, it's like the +3 is huge. It can let you out so many things, so much utility. I think it's better than Rune Removal. Yeah, we're gonna go above here. I think the big number is better than Moss. I think we're gonna set it right here. I think that's where we're gonna land a meter. PTA. Wow, PTA is at a weird spot too. I think there are a lot more ways to special ascend in this set. And the more special ascension there is, the worse PTA gets. But you can also really just play around special ascension. Like there were times where people would be like, I'm gonna go Frigicub, or I'm gonna go Frostrix, Frigicub, Ascend, and then I'm like, I know what you were doing, so I'm gonna PTA this. Um, so you can play around it, but the more Ascension is out there, the worse PTA does get. Also, if water's getting more play, if you PTA their like PTAing foamy feels bad. Well, you can PTA whatever they pull though. And they went down in spirit. I mean, it's definitely game warping. I'm just trying to decide how high in game warping. I think it's one of the best answers to Rabbit and Lavalith. So I'm gonna leave it below Earthquake. Um, yeah, you don't have to splash, but they can't. There's less counterplay to an Earthquake. Unless you play Divine Blessing, but like I said, Divine Blessing feels bad sometimes. Humbust. I think if you're playing Mill, this is like the best Mill card. A-Drive killed me with this card in my first match of Frostfall. I'm gonna put it below Cataran. Oof, Arcturus. You can see that Mill's getting more pieces, but I don't think most of the Mill pieces are necessarily very good. I think Humbust is still the best card in that deck, and I think that deck. Well, and I think the reason is you're still playing good cards with Humbust. I think the other cards encourage you to play bad cards, and encouraging you to play bad cards is like the worst thing you can do on a card design right now. Krakatuga. Um, Krakatuga is weird. I think that fire's getting boosted, water's getting boosted, but it's not fire and water that you're gonna want to do the uh, eruption thing with. You're gonna want to do that with like fire earth. You can play fire earth water. I guess that's fine. It's probably what people will be trying to do, but I think if you're playing both ascension lines, you're gonna kind of be bricking yourself. Um, I'm gonna say almost it, but I'm gonna put it below Latagon. I think Latagon encourages you to play Ambrosia, and that's a better card than Eruption. I think they both are rough to ascend into because they can both eat removal pretty easy. Okay, got so many other cards. Wow. Zeus. Zeus is, in my opinion, still the strongest of the Divine Ruins. He can swing combat math really fast. He's easily searchable by Elichick. Um, he's the Nexus Bank that you go and like you charge up your Astrabbit with. For these reasons, we're gonna put him in broken. I think he's less broken than Jolton, especially now that Sparkit is banned. You're gonna have to work harder for it, but I think the search from Elegic, you have a 7 beater if you need it. You can just hold it in hand if you just wanted the value and deck thin. But the spirits are there when you need a Nexus too. I think that's just broken. Okay, next we got Poseidon. Water is getting a lot better. It is probably the easiest way to go into Chronodile. It's a easy way to go into Curabis or get more spirits on Curabis. Have more spirits for it. Basically have to have it if you're playing Curabis, right? Um, and it works with Drutagwa. It lets you pull spirits over from uh, Aphoros. It's crazy how this card felt awful in base set, and now it feels pretty good. Like it synergizes with a lot of cards. I'm gonna put it kind of high, actually. I think I'm gonna have it fall short of Stoke the Forge. I think that Fire's Diesel is gonna be like you're gonna need less things to go right for Stoke the Forge. Uh, and Moss Station, I think is just a high tier beater. You're not gonna need much for that to go right, but the ceiling on the decks that you can build with Poseidon are pretty high. Hephaestus, we're getting a lot more runes to try around with, but it's still encouraging you to bloat your deck with artifacts. And sometimes artifacts can really pay off, and then other times they can't. Uh, you have to play. I don't know. It's rough. I don't think I can put. Well, you're playing Kinleo with him. He's your spirit for Ash Rabbit, like Zeus is with Astrabbit. He's like worse Zeus. He's like Zeus that you have to pay extra spirits for. Um, so I guess with that logic, I do have to put him higher than this. I'm gonna put him right here. He's like a key. I guess we'll go above Volcaries. He's gonna be a key piece of like a Fire Nexus deck, and I think the Fire Nexus deck is a real thing now. And then he can also be a piece of an artifact deck. I don't think the artifact deck is great, but like I think it's something you can try. Okay, we got all the stadium runes. I think okay, Volcanic Forge I think is going to be see numbers wise, it makes your Ash Rabbit a 2/6 or a 3/6 crazy. Makes your Volcaries a big beater. Good. Um, lets you use Stoke the Forge. Highly important, especially now that you can search Forge or search things. We're gonna put Volcanic Forge in. We're gonna put it between Kinleo and Necrof. Necrof, I mean, being a 6 can be really good. Kinleo will love Nexusing that spirit over. I think Forge will open more doors than Kinleo this set. Atlantis, Rise from the Depths has not taken over like I thought it would. I still think Special Ascension is uh, a little underrated in Elestrals. I think people know it's good, but how many spirits is it worth? How many cards is it worth? It's hard to say. You also kind of have to build your deck weird if you're doing the Rise from the Depths thing, because you have to have the Jolt in, but you also don't want to play like way too much Thunder. Um, it's still good though, right? Like it's got to be good. I think Lockagon might be better. I think Keon might be better for sure too. Beater might be better. We're gonna put it below Pentair. Better than Tech Taurus, I think, because Water is winning out this set. I think. Mount Olympus turns on RT3. That's good enough. It is searchable by Jolton. That's crazy. Just like Zeus is searchable by Elichick. I think that again, I think that Thunder getting all the searchers was kind of a mistake for the early development of Elestrals. But like it's kind of a mixed mistake. It's like using the argument with Yu-Gi-Oh! Like Tier Limit was a fun mirror match. I think Dragon Rulers was a fun Tier 0. People like the Eldritch Tier 0. I didn't really like that. But the Snake Eyes mirror supposed to be miserable. The Thunder Nexus is not miserable. It's not a miserable matchup unless they get Spark at Zeus turn 1. And that's not as high of a percentage of time as the vocal minority would want you to think. But I still think RT3 is going to be the best deck because of how good the searching power of Thunder is. And actually, I think it's going to become like probably more common now that T Nexus like doesn't have Spark It. So like, what else are you going to do with those slots? You know, well, I can throw in Jolton. I wasn't playing Jolton before, and if I play Jolton, I might as well throw in a RT3 instead of PTA. So actually, I think this is going to rise. It's definitely the best stadium by a lot. I think it might be better than Equilings because of RT3 and the searchability. I think the searchability could push it above Sorla. Yeah, I think we're going to put it between Drataya and Cryoling. That's crazy. Like, a stadium's getting this high. But this just shows you, like, why Thunder has such a high representation. Like, we haven't gotten to Daybreak yet. We're almost to Daybreak now. But the sheer power of Thunder, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the top, like, 20 cards. Or I guess if we're top 20, you got, like, 6. Like, a third of the top 20 cards are Thunder. Of course, it's going to be highly represented. And I think largely that's because of the search. It gives you consistency and advantage at the same time. Feloy Forest. I don't have much faith in Feloy right now. If you're playing Earth, the thing you want to do is already have a beater that's big. I guess making your big beaters even bigger is good. You might like I haven't seen what people are playing with Earth beaters right now. Makes Viserys easier to hit with. I guess you can improve Moss Station. It's a Nexus Bank. I think I'm talking it somewhere around here, somewhere in this range. I think I'm going to put it right here. Worse than the Earth Searchers, but better than other elements. I'm giving Earth a lot of flack. I think Earth lost a lot out in Frostfall, and I think it's losing more out in Daybreak. It's got good stats, and good stats are good, but the answers to good stats are also abundant. Island of Aeolia, I think this card is really bad, actually. Like, if you're winning with wind, it's usually because you're playing really tight. You don't have a lot of spirits to just throw around like that, like it feels like you do at the beginning of the game. It doesn't push you past critical points, I guess, without Sorlet. I guess with Sorlet, it does push you critical points. You don't really want this as your spirit bank. You want Aeolas pretty consistently. And then you also need to hit your counter runes a lot, so like that's the why not both. It's probably still good though. You want the Exaltair spirits, pushes Sorlet over. You're not gonna need it for Verituka either though. I'm gonna put it right here under Pandasin. Mountains of Boreas. I think Frost Nexus is completely the wrong way to play Frost. Tried it. I want it to be good. It's not good. This is a bad part of that deck. The strong part of Ice is Cryoling, and if that's the strong part of the deck, then you don't really need the Stadium. I'm going to put it in very niche. There's probably some reason you want to play it. I don't know what your reason is. I'm going to put it, honestly, like here, up between Drackadoodle and Thunderstorm in the very niche category. So let's talk about, okay, we're at the Daybreak cards now, and we're going to talk a little bit about the meta of Daybreak. I think that there is nothing in here that's still going to be stronger than the raw searching power of Thunder. I think Solar is going to be super consistent. I think the reveal mechanic is going to make it less consistent than Thunder. And the stats are lower. I think the climbing ability into Celestia and the Chronodial are really big factors. I think that they make it to where it can play, like it can hang a little bit with Thunder, but I think the raw stats and the superior searching of Thunder is going to make it still better. And honestly, I think that the best deck. And honestly, I think that the best deck will be Thunder. The second best deck will be Thunder Solar, and then the third deck will be like Solar Water, and then like Pure Solar will be third or fourth. I think that that is how the meta will shake out. I think it will be a combination of Solar and Thunder, and then a little bit of Water. And then after that, I think you'll get to like the Water and the Morfrost. Fire and Earth, I think, will be about the same level. I think that any of those decks will be top worthy, but people aren't going to play them as much. It seems like the Elestrals community is really focused on the meta and really focused on like what is the best deck. And I think that will be something that's challenging for the future of seeing. But what does need to be banned? What's fine? I don't think that there will really be more cards that need to be banned. I think the lesson was learned with Sparkit that like really unfun cards that are repeatable are rough. Card information is rough. But that's what I think the meta will shake out to be. I think you got like 2 or 3 elements in the top, and then you got a good cluster of elements below those. I think Wind is going to lose out kind of hard. I think Earth Beaters is going to be like lose out hard. I think the equipment decks will be inefficient on Spirits. Except for Argos, I think that card will be pretty good. I think that you will really get people and blow games away with that. So yeah. Oh, and Lunar. I forgot to mention Lunar. I think Lunar is definitely viable with just the 3 cards it has. I think Panelance, it can really control some games. PTA with Panelance is crazy. I don't think Shield is great with it. Gorgons is an interesting thing you can do with it. Like, if you have control over the game, then you Gorgons. You definitely have control over the game if you Gorgons every turn. In general, I think the expend from themselves cards are kind of harder to trigger than they sound, though. Okay, let's get to it. Dratora, Nexus to heal. Oh, yeah, that mouse is not wanting to work today. Nexus to heal. I think Solar Nexus is going to be one of the best decks. I think this is going to be one of the things that feels not fun about it when you're playing against it. I think it's going to be really cracked. I'm going to put it below Poseidon. I don't think that the raw power of Solar Nexus comes into it. This is just going to be one of the things where it's really in your face that, hey, Solar is good. Lustragon can sit behind counter runes and draw you cards. There is a good amount of raw power there. I don't think it will see a lot of play. I think people will be focused on other things. I think this will actually probably be stronger than Celeste Leo and other things people will really be focused on. I think maybe you can make a case. I think I'm going to make the case that this is cracked. I'm gonna put it below Veritaqua. Veritaqua is actually a really solid option against it, I guess. Except for they're gonna have counter moves for days. Counter moves are already good cards, and cards that make you play other good cards tend to be better. I think that this is a card that wants you to play other good cards, whereas some of the other cards are cards that want you to play bad cards. I can't remember his name. I know the community loves this guy. I like his Stellar. His base set is not that cute to me. I think he is gonna be good. I don't think he's gonna be the best way to go into. Well, you probably do play him in a Chronodial deck, and like he makes it feel really consistent, I guess. I'm gonna put him above Feloy, I think. What is it? I'm thinking of Nomadile. It's not his name though. Is it Nami? Something like that? Nobby? No, Nobby's the. Okay, Nomadile. So I just had this discussion. I think middle stages are kind of wacky because they increase, if they just bridge to the second stage, they're essentially like a part of the third stage. And that makes the third stage wordier, like the amount of stuff you have to know for it. I'm not a big fan of that. Also, they tend to be like really slow. It also adds like an extra piece of, oh no, I can stop you with Gorgons now. And the more people like are familiar with the card pool, the more they'll know. I'm gonna wait for them to commit to this. So that you're also gonna burn spirits if you're playing this. It's like a 5/6. So you can ascend to it even if you don't have other ways to get to Chronodial. So if you're really just playing Chronodial Turbo, you can do that. I think it's fine in that sense. I'm gonna put it above Babloon, below Sonicore for that. I think there's definitely better things you can be doing, especially with those two elements that have like all the power. Chronodial, I think Chronodial is going to see a crazy amount. I think Chronodial is going to see a crazy amount of play. I don't think it's as strong as people are going to say it is. I think that it has some heat. I think it's really easy to get to, specifically because of the water side of it. And the effect is good, but it's really spirit intensive, and typically cards that are really spirit expensive are like Windmore, not going great on Quadrant Theory. It's not quite Windmore. It can take over some situations too, like it can pull you back. If you're playing like a Chronodial Turbo deck, it's pretty easy to get into, so it can save you in some situations. Um, it's definitely better than Voltempest. I'm excited for Voltempest, but Chronodial is definitely better than it. Honestly, I'm gonna put it below Sorlet. I think it is worse than just a one beater. Like I think one beaters just put up the correct amount of pressure for this game, for the right amount of commitment that you're doing. Glimbat, this card is an absolute joke now that Spark gets gone. I had it as like side deck playable. Absolute garbage now that Spark gets gone. Kind of shadow banned this card. Okay, Lestragon can nex a bunch to pop a card. You'll probably be nexusing onto Corvishine. So you're going to get a search too. Well, in best case scenario, which you could probably set up best case scenario a lot with Solar. I don't think a lot of people are going to be doing this. I think it's fine. Popping cards is good. People love their Jatagwas too. I think it's better than Nog. Sure, we'll go with that. I think Exalted Burning puts immediate pressure, like it really sends a message. You have to ascend to Novacore, you have to have Spirits to Nexus with, and then it pops a card. And then even in popping a card, sometimes like that can be a card that, oh, well, it was Gorgon's Gaze, you can't attack this turn, or, oh, it was Tsunami, gotcha, haha. Nebuleo? This card. Okay, first off, I think that this is really complicated for a stage 1. I think this is kind of especially, well, no, I think in like the main set, this is like the edge of what I want to see for complexity in a stage 1. I think it's easy to get a large amount of spirits out in solar. You can search, like you can find your Apollo and you'll have a lot of spirits. I think it's pretty strong. You can ascend really quick. Um, and its card value. This card is crazy, right? I think this is probably the best part of the Celesteela deck, right? Honestly, I think it's be better than Chronodile in that sense. And it's a beater that draws you a card that probably puts it above these other beaters. Probably above Olympus. Probably above Drataya because Drataya's not really stats. Probably above Able. Yeah, this is like the broken card of the set, right? I'm gonna put it below Zeus. Between Zeus and Morfrost. The bridge. You don't really need the bridge. It can be a brick if it's not useful at the time that you get it. Uh, I guess I'm gonna put it in pretty decent because like you can go super fast with that, but you don't really need to go super fast. I'd prefer the consistency over the speed, which is probably why you're playing solar in the first place, right? You like a lot of consistency. But the speed you can get to this guy. Okay, so I'm a lot lower on Lion than other people. I think it's still a high commitment card that just eats an Earthquake or a Resting on Your Laurels. Um, yeah, it can pop your whole field or something, but it could also just get Gorgon's Gaze. Like, this card has a big swing factor. It feels like a much better version of Imperawatt, honestly. And if you're saying that Imperawatt's a good card, sure, you can say Celesteela is like the best card in the game. But if you're saying Imperawatt's awful, then why are you saying this is the best card in the game? If they have a ton of cards out, they'll have an answer for this probably. Um, that said, it's super easy to get into. Then you can pop a whole bunch of cards. It will get answered, but it's going to get you a lot of value up front. I think I'm going to put it, yeah, probably above Volt Tempest. See, even that's a probably, though. Like, it's not the, yeah, it's got to go above Volt Tempest for me. Uh, I think Chronodile's better because of the protection. I think Equilynx is probably a better card than this. Because you're not investing so much into it just to have it popped by the normal things that pop everything else. Peegleam, I think, is a underrated part of the package. I think the way it pops is pretty good. Let's see. I'm gonna put it definitely below these guys. It's like a search target, right? Actually, I'm gonna put Peegleam. Yeah, below here too. We're gonna put Peegleam above Typhlant, below Eruption. It's a really combat heavy card, and I think that is way better in Elestrals than most games. And this is a really solid card to like search out with your solar cards. I think it's more playable than Lumaru. Um, but also the fact that uh, it's a 1/2, and I don't think it's going to get played that much because people are going to be so loaded up on their solar slots. Okay, Falaferos. You can look at theirs. They can't chain it. That's really important with Falaferos. So I think it's going to go in at least good because you get the information and they can't chain, and you get rid of whichever one's the worst. I think the can't chain literally puts it above Nova Core. I'm gonna put it below Volcaries. I think it's less effort Then Rhystone Ups in this format. And I think Volcaries and Hephaestus are going to be key pieces of Fire. And I think Fire is going to be like, it's going to have some teeth. I don't think it's, I think Light, Thunder are going to be S tier, but I think Fire is going to be right up there in A. Uh, okay, the thing about Lumaru, you just play it for its stat. It's just a 5. It's a bad 5. And I think that's a good thing with, it's a good design with a Solar. Like, it gives a piece to a deck that might want it, like Mill. I don't think Mill really wants this, but it could. Uh, but it doesn't give a deck that's already going to be super consistent a great beater. I think it's going to be, I'm going to put it below the Pentair line, honestly. Personally, in the decks that I've been brewing up, I pass over Lumaru. When I play Solar, I want a second element, and I'll play the beater of that element over Lumaru almost every time. If you're in pure Solar, I mean, I guess you have to play it, but you don't feel great about playing it either. Ruminous, though, this card is an absolute joke. Really cool design. Shout out to Costa for this art. I think you're coping. Low cope. Low cope. No scope. Okay, Soul Bell, Soul Stocks, people are really excited for. I think it's going to get a ton of play. I think it's kind of overrated. I think you're filling your deck with fluff, especially if you're trying to do like Soul Stocks and like one of the other Ascensions. I think you're really stretching your deck kind of thin. I think you can do it in Celestlio, I guess, but then you're going to be really brick heavy on the 2s and 3s. Like, you're going to be extremely brick heavy on 2s and 3s if you're doing Celestlio and Soul Stocks. Uh, yeah, I think it's like decent. Like, I think it's its own deck. You play like some basic beaters. It's like missionary solar. You're not playing any of the cool solar stuff that they made for you to play, but it's like a really consistent little tricksy deck that gets you to like a mid pop. I think Soul Stocks, the pop is like good. Guess it's easy to get out, I guess, but you have to really build your deck around it. I feel like it's make your deck, water your deck down for this card, but it is the good part of the deck. I'm gonna put it below Blazers, above Nemasail. Okay, the camels are interesting. Calf Mail, I'm having to look up the cards now. Calf Mail, I think, is really good. Recursion's good. Responsive recursion is good. I think the destroyed, not being tied to battle or anything, is good. Being 3/4, fine stats, and being able to split the element, I think, is also really notable for those parity situations. Um, do you play this in light lunar? I think you play this if you're just in light lunar. I think this is going to be very niche then. Uh, with the caveat that it is pretty good in that niche. Pheramel, though, I think this card's coping. They will never trigger this. And if they do, like, why were you playing? Like, okay, Farrageist is going to be an interesting card to talk about. I actually really love that they introduced a card that gets around Shield of Achilles. The thing I'm not crazy about this card with is that it kind of has 3 effects. It can't be targeted. Wait, let's see what it is. Can't be destroyed by battle. It didn't need that and the Shield of Achilles protection. And then also the expend for 1. That's like 3 effects. And I would really cap Elestrals at 2 effects personally. It has like one of the craziest, coolest designs I've seen in my life. I think the fact that it has 3 effects, like, that feels like a Yu-Gi-Oh card now. And that to me makes it feel really strong. All you got to do to get this out is like, oh, I stuck a guy last turn, I'm going to Nexus and then Ascend. Feels pretty mean. The lunar Elestrals are nothing to scoff at. We don't have a lunar bank yet, but you can just misenchant like a whatever you want to get over there. Hmm. Yeah, I think actually Pharaohgeist is gonna be better than the two everybody's hype about. Um, like you pretty much have to have a rune removal on hand or like die, right? I'm gonna put it above Cryling. I think that's where it goes. I think this jumps over the good beaters. I think the protection from battle and the uh like just how many effects it has. Card feels way less fair. Okay, is it the time? I think it is the time. Okay. Corvishine, Plucky, Exaltus. I think that this is the Solar core that you should be playing if you're playing Solar. I don't think it's the Ascension stuff. I think that stuff dies too easy. I think we've seen what is good in Elestrals, and it is card advantage for cheap, and then converting that card advantage into card disadvantage for your opponent, and then ultimately closing the game out inch by inch. Um, I don't think this is a game that rewards huge moments like an Imperawat or a Cryo Scorch. I think the Daybreak Ascensions are definitely better than them, but they still died to similar things. I think we're in a format where things are easier to get out, but fundamentally, I think that card value and searching, like especially repeatedly, is what's strong in Elestrals. I think Corvishine is miles weaker than Rabbit, though. I think that the losing the one toughness makes it not a great turn one play compared to Rabbit. I think every deck should have access to a 5 power Lestral on turn one. If you're really playing, like if you're playing heavy on Elestrals, you should be able to do that. Um, the repetition of its effect, getting to look at uh, more cards, or getting to look at an exponential number of cards. Um, what I really think, since Corvishine Over the Moon, though, is playing it with Astrabbit. I think Thunder Solar is the true deck. I think you look at the top cards with Corvishine, and then you go in with Astrabbit afterwards to shuffle up. You go with Apollo, and then you go with Astrabbit, or you go with Elechick. Elechick can search your Apollo if you need that. I think you just chain your draws together, and this is a piece that does that. I think since it is like a weaker link in that deck, though, I'm going to move it down. I'm going to put it right here. It doesn't have stats, uh, but I think it's going to be a piece that you just chain your draws together. You really have whatever cards you want almost at any time. And I think that's what this format's going to feel like. Plucky, Searching Your Divine. I think Plucky is a little more confusing. Like, what I'm thinking is you do 3 Elechick, 3 Plucky, and then you have 2 Zeus and 2 Apollo. If that's the line, Plucky is a really good card. You can also play Plucky and First Light in whatever Nexus deck you want to really consistently have your Divine, not worry about having your Stadium, but you really increased your consistency on your Nexus decks. You could also do Plucky, Elechick, Astrabbit if you're into searching like that. Like, the amount of searching you can do is really high. It being a 1/4 does really matter, though. Not being able to put offensive pressure like Elechick does is a huge deal. That said, obviously we've just said that the Solar Ascensions are better too, though. So it's like a very mixed bag. It's a very interesting case. I'm going to say that Plucky. I'm going to put it below Aeolus right now. I think it is still cracked. I don't think it's the piece that you're playing the deck for, but I think it's one of the pieces that make the deck feel unfair. I think that it will go in decks that don't feel fair. I think it's going to go in hyper consistent, always have their card decks that go into their big guys really easy and can do it almost every game. Exaltus. Okay, when I first read this card, I thought it searched birds, so I was really excited to search Voltempest with it. But it turns out it searches like the angel-looking type, which is like Astrabbit and Galaxy and Sorlet. Like, there's a lot of cards that just have like it's like the protagonist searcher. Um, that makes it. I'm just gonna go ahead and put it in at least broken. I don't think like you might one of the healer nexus, but the search nexus is going to be crazy because you can get rabbit to search for your ambrosia. That's kind of like healing anyway. Or you could search for a beater. And I think having that flexibility just like I feel like that's not going to feel fair. I actually am going to put this above Jolton. You're not going to play this in RT3, but you're gonna play this in like a Solar Thunder deck, or like I think the good stuff deck is like Solar Thunder and then your beater of choice. That's and he can search your beater of choice. So, uh, I actually will put him over Cornucopia. Honestly, I think he's. I mean, he dies to removal, and he doesn't put up offensive pressure, but he can really find you whatever you need, and he's like your Solar Nexus. So you trigger Corvishine with him. Like, it's like better Afros, honestly. You're netting 2 cards. Heliolith, I think, is a super underrated card. People are like, but you have to play an artifact rune for him. And you can Argo that artifact, you can Sprouter that artifact, you can just top deck that artifact. You could play it if your opponent just happens to play one. You can Heliolith. It bounces their card, which outs Chronodile and Celestleo. If they're on Pharaohgeist, you just side him out. Or I guess you can side him into Celestleo and Chronodile if like you're struggling with those. He like solid stats. Um, yeah, I think this card is crazy. I think this card is cracked. Um, I think he might be broken power level, but I'm a little more hesitant because the clogging your deck with artifacts doesn't seem that great. I'm gonna put him. I think I'm gonna put him above Stoke the Forge. I think that he's the payoff for it, where Stoke the Forge finds your payoffs. I think a 5/5 that bounces a card is crazy. Cypromal, you can also search an artifact with Cypromal. I guess that's probably better than Sprouter, right? But it's specifically Golden Fleece, which doesn't like it's not Bag of Winds or Trident. I think Bag of Winds and Trident. I guess they're not like strictly better, but I feel like they're situationally better. Being a 4/1 in Solar is important because if you don't want to play Lumaru, this is like probably your next hit. Well, I guess you're running Nebuleo, but this is probably your second beater if you're in pure Solar, which I think is fine. But I think I'm gonna put him below Kinleo. I think Kinleo is gonna have a huge glow up, but I think Cypromal is definitely gonna be playable. Also, I had a lot of fun drawing 3 Cypromals recently. Okay, Pandalence. Okay, so disenchanting from itself does make this card pretty expensive. I think that puts a pretty moderate ceiling on where it can go, but it gets better with every counter rune that they make. It like it's probably lunar water, uh, tsunami. I would guess is probably the best thing you can do. Ultra of Stars is fine. Gorgon's Gaze can really lock up a game if you're ahead and you get that. PTA is okay, but like Ascensions are gonna be kind of make that tricky. I think it's pretty expensive, but I think the effect is a huge amount of raw power. I think I'm gonna put it between Hephaestus and Volcaries. I think it's gonna be better than like the mid tier beaters a lot of the time. But there's gonna be times where it's like, I can't really. use that right now. Where I think Hephaestus is going to be a key part of Fire Nexus. I think Fire Nexus moving really high. Spectrus, I think, is going to be splashable in pretty much whatever element you want. I think he is going to be better than the beater in most elements. And I think Daybreak is going to be very forgiving on your spirit deck. I think you can kind of splash whatever elements you want. I think we're going to see a lot of good stuff pile decks. Later on, I think that at the beginning it's going to be mostly the fast ascents. Then people are going to see, well, this can still get blown out. And then I think that cards like this will rise really fast that are easy to splash. Um, I think I'm going to put him above Plucky because he's such a flexible big beater that also gets around other good cards. Mudlet is interesting. 3/3. The position changing cards just don't perform that great except for Sorlet. But on that case, Sorlet is pretty good. You can do this pretty quick with like Suna or with Alter. But the dream setup is usually the Nexus Bank, the Nexus, and the Divine. And Demeter plus Equilinx plus Mudlet doesn't seem that crazy. I'm gonna guess that this is gonna be pretty decent, but like the top of pretty decent. Like it can be a beater sometimes, but it's not always gonna be a beater. And then there are gonna be times where like you're trying to apply pressure and that 3 power is not gonna cut it for you. And then like if you're gonna be doing the Nexus thing, then you can find like stronger elements for that because of this. Cryspore, I'm gonna put him in pretty decent too. I don't think he's gonna see much play, but I think he's gonna be fine when you do play him. I'm gonna put him below Sonicore. He's not gonna close out games like Sonicore. Boltuga, I think is gonna get a lot of play. I think people are gonna really try turtles. Um, I think he's gonna be decent. I think he's gonna be like one of the stronger pieces of that deck, but that deck itself, I still think it's really expensive, and if you're not like really controlling the board at the same time, which is hard to do if you're using all your cards doing the eruption thing, then you're gonna get ran over and you're gonna run out of spirits pretty quick too. The Suvatsuga, man, if he had higher power, okay, yeah, that's almost it, but he needs higher power. I think he's better than Krakatuga if that helps. I think we'll put him above Latagon. Um, I think being an Earth, which is the element that's really focused on invokes right now, I think that's the boon. Barabib. This card's crazy. Going Fruit Boom, going Fruit. You just play an Earthquake, burn them one. Like, this card's cracked. It's cracked. I actually think we're gonna put it up here, next to Drataya. I think it's a little worse than Drataya because like you can fizzle a lot more with Barabib than you can with Drataya. Um, I think I think Fruit's gonna be hard to crack. I think the ratios are gonna be hard to crack. Uh, but I think you're definitely running Barabib. You're definitely running Drataya at 3. I think both of those are 3, and that's the starting point, right? And I think those are both the cards where when you play them, it's like, okay, can I stop their effects this turn? If you can, you do. But hmm, we're not going to talk much about the new fire fungi. They are jokes. They're going to be beloved by the community. They're going to be highly played like Bronzeglow, I think. Dies to removal is a good enough answer in Elestrals, though. Okay, Rummikul, this card, not okay, okay. Okay, you get Stoke the Forge, or you get whatever stadium you want. Actually, the stadium decks could also use this. Um, really, like, you could play this in RT3 if you wanted to. You could splash RT3, Stoke the Forge, or no, you probably don't Stoke the Forge, but um, you could really have RT3 up all the time. I think this is the piece that sends fire to where it should have been before. It's a little expensive sometimes, but getting your stadium too is so nice. I think we're gonna put it. Actually, I do think it's better than Celestlio. Um, I think Celestlio does the things that are bad in Elestrals really well. I think Rummikul does the things that are great in Elestrals kind of moderately. So I think I would rather play Rummikul and encourage myself to do powerful things. Scavicul, also a tutor. Hard to assess. It's really hard to assess. It seems like it's there because it wants you to like get your 2 card combos. You can pull like Infrix, Kinleo if you're running behind. You can pull you just pull 2 Necros if you want. Yeah, hard to assess. I'm gonna put it in pretty decent, but like you don't want to play too many Ascensions right now, I think. I think people are gonna uh turn up their removals too for the Ascensions. I think Mill Ascension is a joke. Ash Rabbit, this card is insane. It like okay, it's worse than Ash Rabbit at the start of the game, but if you think about it, you have so much control over what you get back that it's like better than Ash Rabbit later in the game. That said, though, I think that the early game does matter a little more, so I think Ash Rabbit's gonna be better. Plus, being in Thunder instead of Fire, so you have the other searchers. Like the compound power of searching is gonna be so much higher. But I think Ash Rabbit is definitely gonna go in Broken. I think I'm gonna put it below Zeus, above Nebuleo. I think it will be better than just like a beater like Nebuleo. I think saying, hey, do you want to give me Earthquake, Earthquake, or Resting on Your Laurels is gonna be crazy. Hey, do you want to give me Ambrosia, Fire Spirit, or PTA? Like, okay, whatever you want, bud. Eddie is for Kuribus Turbo. I think Kuribus Turbo is going to be mid. I think Eddie's going to be one of the weaker pieces of it. He's a 4-1, which is not a bad stat, especially when you play him. He changes the position. He's pretty much going to kill one thing and then either die the next turn or also get you to Kerberos. Um, I think he's going to be definitely better than Tadpuff in his role and being a 4-1. I think he'll be better than Tectorus this format. I'm going to leave him there. Kerberos, when I first saw the card, I didn't realize that it was expend from field and not just expend. Uh, that really affects my placement of the card. I think it has a good relationship with Lockagon. I think it's probably better than Lockagon because it can recover spirits on its own rather than having to rely on recovering. And then if you get both out, can you imagine that? Um, Easier to get into because you have Eddie if you're playing that. I think that's a cool thing to play. I think Water Lunar is like a real deck. I think we're gonna go in good actually. I think we're gonna land below Necruff. It's a lot of spirits to do your thing, but it's like if you get going, it can really pop off. Porcutide. I'm gonna say it's very niche. Put it in the control of your opponents, and the effects aren't like that backbreaking for a like, and it doesn't put offensive pressure. Coastalith, I think, is going to be pretty decent. It's kind of like, I wish it had an aggressive stat line instead of the passive stat line, but it catches you up a lot. It's a huge wall, and special ascending or special casting in Elestral is always at least decent. Um, you can go with Typhlant with this. You can go with Sluggle with this. You can pull the Foamy, crash the Foamy, uh, get the Galaxy, and now Coastalith than 8. But you have, like, the condition on this one is worse than the condition on most of the lists. Like, having 2 of your opponent's Elestrals in defense is, like, a pretty big ask. We're going to go... Actually, I think it's going to probably be right above Sluggle. It can do a lot of combo-y things, but it's a lot more to ask than a lot of the other cards. And seeing, like, the 2 Fire Searcher right there is a lot. Okay, Larvicell. Honestly, Larvicell is now going to see a ton of play just because Spark It is banned. Going into Anacell so easy. Like, climbing up that fast is good, but you don't even have to play it for that. It's kind of a weak stat line. But being the Thunder Nexus card that, like, triggers your Astrabbit again, that's, like, literally enough to just be cracked. I think we're going to go above Voltempest. You're going to see more of this card than you want to, but it can also do, like, a lot of really cool stuff. I think the Phosphocell deck is cool. I don't think it's the right way to play Thunder Solar. I think Thunder Solar, you just play, like, the good stuff value cards. But yeah. Anacell, I think, is kind of the weaker part of this combo. Being a 4/4/2 cost, I think it's gonna go pretty decent because it's so easy to get out, and, like, it's just a bridge. It's like a fine bridge. It encourages you to overcommit. Whoa, 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 whoa! We're not doing that. We're not doing that. Where did it go? Where did it go? Here it is. I'm gonna put it. I think we're gonna put it below Soul Bell. I think. Phosphocell is... It's supposed to be like a lower power but more flexible kind of boss monster that's easy to get out. It kind of feels in the vein of, like, a choose your own Stratomoth. But it's in the good elements, so I think it will be at least good. I think I'm going to put it right below Curubis. It's not the reason you play the deck, so it's not up there, but it's pretty easy to get into, and then, like, it can have a commanding position on certain boards. Vulgaris, I think, is not going to see much play, honestly. Having multiple runes, I mean, you can do it, but you're probably already winning if you are. So we're going to go almost, but there are way better things to do. I think I'm going to put it, like, below Vertilith, honestly. Arcolith, though, I'm really excited for. I think this is the piece that really makes Voltempest a thing. It can also, like, just win a game out of nowhere sometimes. Like, you're close on spirits, they're waiting to see what you top deck, but you had this in your hand the whole time. You just play it when they're at, like, 2 spirits and they overcommitted. And then you just swing in. The effect, or the condition is kind of rough. You can definitely lose out with this card. I don't think it's super high, but I think it's one of the pieces that is going to make Voltempest better. It's a good comeback, too. I think the aggressively statted liths definitely have an advantage over the other ones. We're going to put it about here. About there is fine. I think it's better than Blazer is. Verituka, I think we're going to see a good amount of this card if Wind sees play. I don't think Wind's going to see as much play as it could, because it doesn't have anything super flashy right now. But I think that it has a lot of good tools, and I think that it has, like, a moderate amount of consistency. So you're trading in the consistency you would have in Thunder or Solar for having the options to deal with whatever. Um, of course, though, you're also trading down in stats, but I think Verituka is part of what you're gonna do to make up with that. I don't think it's as good as a lot of these cards. I'm gonna put it above Plucky. There we go. I think Spectrus being splashable into a lot of decks is gonna make it better. Like for example, swinging into Verituka is gonna make Spectrus better. But Verituka is gonna be a pretty solid piece in a lot of like win decks. I think Sorlet Verituka is a really solid aggressive core. Jave Lucan, though, I think is coping. If you're really trusting that you're going to play an Elestral and destroy theirs by battle, you're really hoping, right? And for that same reason, we're going to put Cyclovenom in that same category, but we're going to put it above the other cards in this category because, like, it feels more like Viserys. Okay, we're almost through. Got Toxiswarm. I think Toxiswarm is going to be a good card. I think it's gonna what makes what was Solar Wind a lot better. It's gonna make Exaltair strong. It's tutorable by Aeolus. You could max out on this in Solar or in Wind if you wanted to. I think Wind is less tough on the slots for this effect than Thunder is. I think it's okay, so it's definitely going above Toxion. It's gonna be close though. I think it is like I think the gap between Toxiswarm and Cypromal is pretty big, but uh, I don't see it being better than Kinleo. And honestly, Forge, Phosphocell, yeah, I don't see it being better than like this stuff. But the situations where it's good, it's gonna put on so much pressure. This guy, what is it? What's his name? Rhynymph. I think you're coping. I think using your normal summon to just set up your special ascend is coping. The special ascend itself, I think, is very niche. I think that this is a card to keep an eye out on if we get more support for stuff like this. And I think it would be cool if it's good eventually, but I don't think it's good right now. This card, though, whoa, 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 whoa. They just gave Frost like a Nexus that is good. Like, this Blizzard's on Nexus, right? Yeah. Or, no, it can't be cast as long as it's enchanted. So, it's got a 5, so it's better. It's a lot better than Cerebral. Or it's better than Chillowaddle. Chillowaddle's pretty low, though. I'm gonna say this is pretty decent. And pretty low and pretty decent. I think I'll put it above Cryosaur. I think Frigid Cup will hit it one day, but I don't think this is what you want to do right now. I think that you will play this over Frigid Cup. Bat form, I think, is not getting enough attention. I think that most people aren't really big on Morfrost. I don't think it landed like the team expected it to. I think the deck is good, but I think the reason the deck is good is that its form's really good. I think that other people are looking at it and think the deck is like what they're trying to do is set up like an impenetrable board that also can pop and recur a lot. I think the best thing that Morfrost does is actually just gets 4 guys out really fast. And if you can control the board for like 2 or 3 turns with 4 guys out, you're just going to deplete their spirit super fast. And I think that this is another piece that makes that easy. So I'm actually going to put this in Cracked. I'm going to put it at the bottom of Cracked because the stats are so bad. But like really you're just here, like I think the Morphos plan really should just be I get 4 guys out, set 2 back row, and blow up your whole board. Pulsar, I think, is the replacement beater for Arcturus and Frost Nexus, but I don't think Frost Nexus is that great of a deck. I think it definitely better things you can be doing. I think I'm gonna put him right here. No, not right here. Right here. Yeah, better than Lumaru. Worse than cheap Pantera, or like not a cheap Pantera. Pantera cost $1 million, but okay. Apollo. Apollo is crazy. He synergizes with his element like crazy. You really need a spirit bank for your element. I'm gonna go broken. And he's better than Corvishine. I think I'm gonna stick him right here. Below Nebuleo, Ash Rabbit. I think he is still worse than Zeus because Zeus's like board pressure is a lot. Like I know Apollo is card advantage, but like if you can't convert a card into tangible field pressure, what good is that card? Like if you're getting another 1/4, that's not going to help you as much as I'm turning my 4/1 into a 7/1 or a 7/4 or whatever. Bow of Apollo. It's attack directly and you recover 1 when they deal. So it can kind of pays for itself, but you're down in card advantage. If you get in with it twice, you're healing. If you do this with like an Arcolith, you can swing like 5 and then recover 1. But then you eat a Shield of Achilles, you eat an Earthquake the next turn, you eat a Resting on Your Laurels the next turn, and it's blown away, you're down an extra card. Yeah, I think it's going to be the almost it, but I'm going to put it, since this is another way you can use Argo or Sprouter or, yeah, I think I'm going to put it above Krakatuga. I think it's like a bad option for like a fine deck. Golden Fleece, I think, is one of the playable artifact runes. In my opinion, you're mostly going to be playing this if you're just on Argo. This is going to be like a one of an Argo. I think Argo's a good card, but all the cards that you're going to search with it are going to be pretty medium, but it's the flexibility that's going to make it fun. And treating it like a battle trap that's going to kill their thing is what makes it good to me. I think this is going to be... put it here. I think the rest of the stuff is pretty gimmicksy. I think that this is like still in the gimmicksy area. I think kind of this whole area feels kind of gimmicksy, except for Tectorus. I just think Tectorus is not the beater you want to be playing with Earth right now. Yeah, it feels gimmicksy, but it feels stronger than these kinds of gimmicks. First Light, this card is bananas. I think that this is one of the things that I think First Light is the reason people are freaking out about Solar being consistent, because like this does get you like, oh well, I didn't see the 3 cards I wanted on top. First Light will help me find it. Or like since searching implies that you're gonna shuffle, if you look at the top and you don't like it, then you First Light and you shuffle. It's like built in there. The fact that you put it on top, though, and don't draw it to hand, you can't use it immediately if you're behind. I'm going to put it below Apollo. But as you see, we've got a lot of solar up here now, too. It's like a lot of thunder, a lot of solar. And we're starting to get a little bit of fire up here is the thing. We've got a little bit of frost. Um, People could play Frostborn. You can go play Frost right now if you want to. You can. You can. Okay, that just leaves us with the ruins. The temple, there's not an invoke that requires you to have a Temple of the Sun. You can use it as your nexus with Exaltus, which is fine. You can shuffle it away pretty handily if you don't want it. It can turn. Do you have a lot of fours? It makes your Corvus Shine a 1/5. It makes your Nebuleo bigger. You probably do play it for sure, but not at a high ratio. And like there's a fair amount of time where you just push it down. Or it could be like just a sideboard option if they're on like a field deck. I'm gonna put it below Feloy because Earth does want that pressure a little bit. It's not gonna move mountains for solar. Globby could go higher, but I think it encourages bad deck building. Like, I think the raw power for Globby is higher, but I don't want to play cards that make me want to play like build my whole deck around it and then the thing just not work. Okay, Guardian of the Fleece is another reason why I feel like solar, like the Argo thing, is a little more viable. It's pretty conditional though. Like I'm getting Divine Blessing vibes, and Divine Blessing's like all the way down there. I think it's a little more controllable than Divine Blessing. It's like any card effect, right? So I'm gonna put it in very niche. That sounds like the right place for it, right? I'm gonna put it below the little camel. I think little camel. I think it's. I think the camel isn't gonna see a lot of play, but like the people that do play are really gonna notice how much they appreciate it. Dense Fog. Oh my gosh, this card finally. Um, this card is really gonna change how Elestrals is played for this set. Especially now that we're getting best of 3. This can be a sideboard card against like it's kind of specific cards that have like static effects that are crazy, like Galaxy and Tectorus and Volcaries. It can be used to stop Nexus decks like Kinleo and Aphoros, and well, the pimp formerly known as Thunder Nexus. Uh, it can be used. You just have to use it proactively. So if like the effect's already activated, it's not going to do anything. But it's gonna be like Gorgons. I think it's gonna be game warping. I think it's gonna be game warping. I don't know how many copies you play. I don't know if it's a sideboard or main deck card. I'm not sure if it's worth the Shadow Spirits. I'm not sure if you want to like what you're cutting for it. But I think this is going to be a card that you really have to consider when you're deck building. Like you can't be too weak to this card and Gorgons now, because it's going to come up a lot more. It also has like light synergy with the new Viserys. Yeah. Circle the Sky. This is a win more card. Typically, I think. Your receives will get a bonus from it, but if you have your receives and your bank, then you're pretty close to already being online, and like the extra cards aren't going to push you over. If they do push you over, then I guess that helps you win the game. But at that point, you could have just played Nog. It's like more conditional. Nog. I guess we're going to put it in almost it, but there have been several decks I've played where I'm like, sure, we can try this, but decks and Elestrals are really tight, and like you really got to justify your spot. And if you have to have a lot of things already going, usually you're not justifying your spot. Poison Tunic. I think Poison Tunic's gonna be underrated. I didn't mean to put it in joke. Um, I think that this will be one of the best ways to turn Heliolith on because it doesn't use your normal cast, and it can still negatively impact your opponent. Like if they have two Elestrals out, one's say one's a 7, one's a 5. You can Heliolith, bounce the 5, or you can Tunic the 7, drop it down to. It does reduce by 2, right? Yeah, by 2. Um, drop the 7 down by 2, like drop their Cryovern by 2, and then bounce their 5, and then you swing in with your, like, you crash, and they take 2. Uh, or if they're a 6, say they have like a Sorlet under Island, you can Tunic, Heliolith, bounce one of their guys, and then crash over the Sorlet. I think this card is going to be underrated specifically for its interaction with Heliolith, and I think this is like not a required card with Heliolith, but it's pretty close to it. It's the best card to play with it, I think. I think that's a really strong synergy. Or Argo. I think that and Argo. I think I'm gonna put it right here. In the burn, it's nice. Rock and hard place. This basically is gonna pop. I think it's gonna pop a rune most of the time. Unless you just have like. Unless you don't have much of a board. Or you have a really big board and they have a tsunami, but I think this is usually going to be rune removal, but it's going to be like good rune removal. I think this is also working toward making Water Dark a good deck. I'd say it's pretty well, and it gets you to Kerberos. I think the Kerberos knocks it up to getting good. I think Eddie might be better because he does more on his own. Your opponent gets to choose. I think I'm going to put it below Tadpuff and Mouse Station too. Probably below. I'm going to put it right here above Peegleen, below Sprouter. Argo, I think, is going to be a super underrated card. I think the spiky players are going to be like, I don't want to commit a lot of spirits. I don't want to play this. But the ones that do play it are going to be really rewarded because it's going to blow up so many games. Spiky players might just pick it up and be like, it's a battle trap. Battle traps are good in Elestrals. It's kind of a hard card to play, though, because you need to really figure out how many of what artifacts you want, and that's going to be a tricky thing to figure out. But I think this card is cracked. I think this card is super strong. It makes, I think battle traps are just crazy. I don't know how many you play, I would start out trying to play 3, or maybe, I would try 3 and, 2 artifacts and cut, a shield and a PTA or something. I don't know what you cut. The cutting is, the really hard part. It's what kind of runes is this better than? Well, the whole effect is better than, a PTA to me. But having to run that and another deck slot and having to cut something else too, and then sometimes you draw the counter rune that you wanted to play, and then you don't get the battle trap aspect. I think it really knocks it down a lot, so it's not game warping. But do you really want more game warping counter runes? Five cards left. Mudslide, I think, is a cope. I don't think many people are going to be on. I don't think many people are going to be on artifacts. I think a couple people are going to be on stadiums. Obviously, a lot of people are still going to be on gods, but even that, do you really want to run that? And how many of this do you run? Because it's kind of a dead card otherwise. And then also, how much is this really going to impact them? Cryoblast, though, I think this is a solid piece of removal for Frost. You can lower their defense or something. Uh, Pops a lot of the cards that have high attack. I think that this is actually gonna like probably the strongest new card Frost gets like overall. I think Bat Form is probably gonna be better for the Morphrost deck if people play it like the Swarm deck that I feel like it should be. Um, but I think Cryoblast has a lot of raw power. I'm gonna put it. I think we said there's a big drop off after Cypromal. We're gonna put it in between Toxine and Cypromal, somewhere in there, somewhere in that big drop. Bloom, I think you're coping. Earth's receive is not great. If Earth had like a healing receive, I could see Bloom going in like Fruit Boom. If Clovey had better stats, it'd be pretty good. But it's not. Don't poke the bear. It's gonna be very niche, I guess, right? I gotta put it here because you're never gonna play this outside of bears. You're not gonna play bears just because this exists. But it's gonna be like the best card in your deck. Follow the Wisp. Also a joke. Probably still better than the other cards in joke. But that's my tier list. I really think that Thunder's going to be really dominating. I think Solar's going to have its spot for sure. I think people are going to be playing a lot of the Ascensions, but I think that they are definitely very answerable. So I would rather just play like the cheap stuff that gives me value than the big Ascensions that can get blown up. And I might get proven wrong. Like these might move up by the end of the set. And I'd be okay with that. Like there's a lot of games where investing in high cost creatures is bad, and Elestrals has been one of those so far, and it'd be fine to see them be cool. I think if these ones specifically are good, it's more because they're stacksy or super easy to get out, which is like not the greatest reason, but at the same time, it would be something different. And I think something fresh with Elestrals is always good with how long we spent in base set format. I'm personally really excited about the artifact stuff. I think the new liths are so interesting. And then the deck that I've played the most, which is Wind Nexus now, like getting Verituka, that feels like a really big deal to me. Alongside Toxic Swarm, I think both of these are really solid. At least one of, maybe two Tukas. Uh, and it feels like something that the deck was really hurting for before. I'm also really excited about the Phosphocell line. I'm going to be really tired of Thunder Solar if my prediction is correct and this is what the format looks like. But having a flexible boss like Phosphocell will be really fun. I think he just dies to removal a lot of the time, though. I think Water is going to be a really interesting deck, especially Water Dark. I think will be pretty popular with Kerberos, Spectrus, in Archetype Dense Fog and Tsunami and Dodge's Tsunami. Galaxies are really solid. Like, you could move Galaxy into Broken, and I would accept it right now, just in the current format. And then seeing how much more heat Fire is getting is exciting. I think that relying on Volcanic Forge and to stoke the Forge is kind of multiple card syndrome. And I think Hephaestus relying on the artifacts encourages you to commit too much. But it's really exciting to see how much more value Fire is getting, and I feel like that's what made it drag along before. I think the Kinleo build's going to be like probably the best build you can do with Fire now. And it's going to be really focus on Ash Rabbit. I think Ash Rabbit's going to be the best card in the deck for sure. Super underrated. I think some people like know, but like the mainstream people ain't saying it. They ain't saying it. That card is bonkers. Let's see. I feel like I'm forgetting something. I think more Frost is gonna be like the best way to play Frost, but I think people don't realize like getting 4 out is just the strong part. It's not the all the billion effects you can stack. But thanks if you hung out in this video for all that time. I appreciate you. If you skipped to the end, hey, what's up? Just leave a comment that said you skipped to the end. It's fine. Um, yeah, thanks. I hope you have a great night from Okapi Gang. Thank you for being a part of Elestrals and this little journey. Good night.